No, I think we can start. Yes. Yes, I hope you had a good night's sleep, and thank you for yesterday. And welcome to the second day of this conference, this Nordic-Baltic conference. I think today we have two sessions pointing forward on the future solutions and innovation processes. I mean, policymakers know that they have to base their decisions on science, but there are also uncertainties in science. How fast are innovations in energy technologies? Are they taking place as shifts in paradigms, or do they move more evolutionary? The concept of learning curves are very challenging, and it's interesting that we have that on the agenda today. The storage part of the value chain, likewise, we all know that we need storage with increased intermittency of renewables. And then we all know that we need actions, and the actions, they are on local level. And that's and the last topic we will shed light on is the need for cooperation, and why not stronger cooperation between the Nordics and the Baltics. I think that's we have four different speakers in this session, and the first man out is Mr. Magnus Killingland from DNV Norway, who's dealing with the long-term perspectives on the very exciting topic of impact of learning curves on future costs in new markets. So I give the floor to you, Magnus, to address this issue.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. I will present some key takeaways on learning curves for you here today, and I have kind of three subtopics. The first topic is interconnected factors. There is quite a challenge to identify how fast learning goes, and we also see that now energy security is a priority. It's on the top of the agenda, and especially also for new markets. And we see that the new markets are more vulnerable than others. And I hope this inspires to some new perspectives and discussions for later. But first, a quick introduction on DNV. We work a lot on learning curves to help technology do technology qualification and ensure that it's done safely. We certify, verify, and test a lot of technologies, also fuels. And we're owned by a foundation, so we have a long-term perspective on sustainable development. And we also assure a lot of solutions, and we give expert advice on a lot of topics. And we do our best to support new standards, new best practices within the industry. We do our best to lower the cost on technology with high learning rates. And we do a lot of research on forecasts. So we have, for instance, our energy transition outlook, all free for download. We also have regional and sectorial reports. So in these reports, we have done a lot of assumptions on learning rates. And for instance, some are done on population, economy, technology, and policy. And when we look at technology, some of those learning rates are between 16 to 26. But we see also that now there is, in some technologies, a slowdown. So the learning rates, those reflect the reduction of cost per doubling of installed capacity. And each doubling of installed capacity sees technology costs fall by these high percentages owing to greater experience, expertise, and industrial efficiencies, as well as further R&D. So learning curves tend to be self-fulfilling. The lower the cost, the more installation, and vice versa. But learning also comes from a lot of policies. It's not only about technology. So for instance, we assume carbon prices. They push and pull these technologies forward and also make the polluting technologies more costly. So we assume between 20 to 250 dollars per tons because it varies a lot all over the globe. When it comes to the economy, we expect it will double towards 2050. And compound annual growth rate is at 2.5% per year. and also the population will go to about 9.6 billion in 2050. So let's have a deep dive into some of these factors. There are so many interconnected. So there are multi-level interactions from research and development in the industry, but also multi-level interactions in the market. And the production costs, they are affected a lot on general scientific and technical progress, how fast old technologies have to be replaced, synergies within a cluster and hubs. And also testing and scaling is, of course, really important. It's a lot of learning by doing, learning by using, by interacting. And private and public partnerships can accelerate this testing and scaling, which we see is being done now with a lot of innovation funds and subsidies. Organizational learning is maybe not so tangible. It's more hard to measure, but it's all about knowledge management, how many people you actually have in the sector, and how well they collaborate. But what's interesting, I think, is also that there has to be regulation. There has to be iteration on the regulation. It has to learn from the technology. So there's a synergy there between not only the technology learning, but also the producer prices, market prices, and also the regulation. So we see there's a lot of requests for faster permitting in the market today. So the market uptake and learning can either stop a new technology, or it can adapt it and pave the way for large-scale deployment. For instance, taxes on new technologies can be a barrier. So all of these effects that affect the producer prices and market prices has to be adjusted as well, so it doesn't work against the technology development. And in addition, you need regulation and directives. You have to have new practices. We see that there's a lot of gaps in the standards. For instance, I'm a segment lead for hydrogen and CCS in Northern Europe, and we see there's a lot of gaps on the regulation there on safety for large-scale hydrogen and CCS. And a lot of barriers have to be removed to get this established practice running. And when it comes to learning, I would say that there are kind of stages on this learning curve. Maybe I've heard about technology readiness level. That's a scale that goes all the way from one basic technology research all the way to system test, launch, and operations. This is being used by EU, NASA, and a lot of other research organizations. It's also part of ISO standards. And many technologies are TRL 9, but they're still not in the market. They're still not competitive. So you also need a commercial readiness index. That means it has to be going from a kind of a hypothetical commercial proposition all the way to commercial trial with supported scale-up. And then eventually it will come into multiple commercial applications. And finally, it can be on its own and then be competitive and be a bankable asset class. So we have seen a lot of technologies kind of stopped and stranded at the TRL 9 because the market is not mature yet, or there is not enough subsidies to get it off the ground. So in DNV and the whole industry works on moving the TRL level higher and moving the technology towards competitive commercial. That can be with, of course, R&D, but also a lot of methodology on technology qualification and technical assurance to scale the pilots to large-scale multiple commercial applications. But the financial side is really, really important. So it's supported by subsidies, taxes on the polluting technologies, and a lot of financial de-risking evaluations. And you might have seen this kind of learning curves that are straight lines in a logarithmic diagram. And you have conventional polluting technology that might not have that much learning. It's already developed, like oil and gas. And then you have the new ones that sooner or later we expect will, per megawatt, per megawatt hour, per levelized cost of energy, will cross the existing technology and be competitive. But that's without CO2 costs. So if you add CO2 costs to the polluting technology, then it will be competitive earlier. And what I think is also interesting is that the area is represented by subsidies or investments. So if you have CO2 cost, you will have less subsidies, less investments before it becomes competitive. But we see now that some learning rates are slowing down because of several reasons that I will come back to quite soon. And that means you have to add more subsidies to get it competitive, unless you then have those CO2 costs. So there are some bumps in the road. Here you see a graph from levelized cost of solar energy, especially solar plus storage have some bumps on the road. This may affect the learning rate a bit on the short term, but on the longer term, usually the learning rate continues. So we see that there are many short-term cost inflationary pressure that may mask the cost reduction. We think we have to adjust the learning curve or learning rate, but that might just be temporary. We see that a lot of regional protectionism and polarization may hinder the effective transfer of technology learning. And we also, sometimes you go from, for instance, monocrystalline to polycrystalline technologies, like a technology shift, then that also might not, you might not see the learning rate go down as fast in that moment, but in the long term it continues. This is also the case for wind, offshore wind and onshore wind. A lot of bumps on the road there. That might be also due to rapid design cycles. You continue to design larger and larger wind turbines and turbine blades. But there's also a lot of challenges on the supply chain. We do quite detailed modeling in our energy transition outlook. Here you can see average levelized cost of energy, which is the solid line, and then also the one adjusted for energy revenue, the dotted line. But you can also see that there is a high range between the maximum and minimum value on these technologies. So that means that there are quite large regional differences. So we have 10 regions in our energy transition outlook. And unfortunately, many of the new markets are on the higher end, often on the top of the cost range. Even though they might have good cost conditions for wind and solar, the industry is not as mature, the supply chains are vulnerable, and the supplier industry is small. If you look at how much these different technologies double going forward, we can have a look at, for instance, onshore and offshore wind. We expect that this will double almost 3 times on onshore wind and 4.5 times for offshore wind. So that means that about 3 doublings is more than 10 times more for some of these technologies. Solar PV could be almost 4 times, doubling 4 times. Electrolyzers 3 and CCS 6. Heat pumps are more mature. We'll have about 2.5 doubling. So what does this mean in actual real numbers? CCS will go from about 20 million tons of CO2 per year today to more than 1,000 million tons per year, for instance. And electrolyzers from about 30 gigawatts to 300. So there are quite a lot of growth here. A lot of technology learning, and these are based on learning rates, as I mentioned. But energy security is moving to the top of the agenda, and that affects learning rates in different ways. We have frequently used numbers for the 2 corners on the bottom, affordability and sustainability, levelized cost of energy, or greenhouse gas emissions. And the security dimension is usually only more qualitatively evaluated. But in the past 18 months, the world has experienced the consequence of the grab for gas and the reversion to coal in some regions as cheaper alternative to gas. We have also seen increased attention to renewable projects in most places as domestically sourced energy is harder to disrupt, and many governments are looking at nuclear even with renewed interest. So local sourcing of both energy and energy infrastructure is emerging as a prominent national objective. And this year, our research team has revised our power sector forecast to better reflect the existing and future willingness of countries to pay a premium for locally sourced energy and locally produced equipment, and that has impacted our results. So, as I mentioned, the energy produced locally is being prioritized, and our observation is that governments are willing to pay between 6 and 15% premium on local sourced energy. And this is adding to supply chain complexities and costs, which are already restrained by inflation in the short term. But we think that in the long term, energy security and sustainability will pull in the same direction with decarbonizing energy mixes. That is mainly with wind, solar, and batteries as the main sources, increasingly shielding national energy systems from the volatility of the international energy trade. But a working hypothesis is that new markets are more vulnerable in many aspects, also that learning curves may slow down, and that there may be more volatility in these new markets. We have a term which is called slowbalization, that is the slowing of globalization. So the world economy has entered a slowbalization phase dating back to the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, characterized by a slowdown in the pace of international support for open trade. This means less international trade, local manufacturing, and this adds to the higher capex everywhere. We also discuss a lot of opposing forces. We have chosen 10 in our report. I will just touch briefly upon 5 of them here, which is more relevant for new markets. Some forces are triggering change, while others are barriers that uphold the status quo, making for a rather messy transition. And these opposing forces may affect new markets more than others, also in the negative way. However, even with forces against the green transition, most of the forces nevertheless remains oriented towards decarbonization. So we have record spending on renewables, 19% growth from 2021, and is expected to extend its lead over fossils in 2023. But, however, there's uneven geographical distribution. 90% of clean energy spending is from advanced economies and China. So popular fossil fuel subsidies in many new markets hamper renewables competitiveness. There's a strong pace for renewable power, but for instance, hydrogen and CCS and synthetic fuels as critical net zero solutions meet skewed competition from unabated fossil fuels and insufficient carbon pricing, and often more in new markets. There are landmark global agreements. For instance, the Paris Agreement and the Biodiversity Agreement unite objectives on net gain for the environment. But fossil CO2 and methane emissions are increasing, deforestation remains high, planetary boundaries are being crossed. Public support for climate action is quite high in many regions, but there are especially competing concerns in new markets and developing countries. We have many frontrunners on advanced solutions. But the system inertia is very strong. Non-power, low-carbon technologies, production capacities are scaling very slowly. And decommissioning of large old assets is taking a long time. So to summarize, new supported technologies with both market and regulatory readiness gives high learning. Long-term energy security and sustainability will pull in the same direction, that is long-term. And we are quite convinced that opposing forces in the energy transition may affect new markets much more than others. Thank you for your attention.
It's extremely interesting, Magnus, to listen to you. I learned a new word, globalization. I will not forget that one. I think we could take a couple of questions from the audience. Here.
Okay, thank you. You touched the question that energy production will be localization of energy production. And my question is, what types of ownership are most efficient? Is this municipal ownership, private or state ownership, or combination of that? What is your experience?
We see that many small local energy companies are partially owned by the community or the state, or state-owned utilities. So they need that to be able to operate and invest. They cannot do that on their own. But there is also a lot of interesting joint ventures and collaboration with other larger investors and development funds. But the main ownership is usually public in those that nationalize and focus on their own market.
Thank you. And I also from Mark Lane at the left-hand side. You had a question? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, waiting for the...
I just saw kind of on one of your graphs there, kind of you saw that CCS would be kind of doubling, was it 6 times? I think kind of, it seems kind of CCS is always put forward as the shining white light in terms of kind of by the fossil fuel industry saying kind of that we continue with the status quo because we'll have this fantastic CCS in the future, but it always seems to be in the future. So how realistic is it that that will actually kind of occur in terms of kind of that doubling by 6 times kind of, or is it something that's likely to be the same thing that is always kind of something in the future that isn't really developed? The second question then I think was on the offshore wind, which you said would be increasing a lot. And I think yesterday from the presentations we had, we were looking then kind of at offshore wind as well in the Baltics. But I'm just curious to see, do you see efficiencies by having a regional approach kind of in the Baltics for offshore wind development rather than say kind of a national approach to production to meet national demand? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. These curves are forecasts. It's what we think is a realistic future. It's not about scenarios on what will have to happen to reach climate targets. So these are based on all the licenses that are now being issued in UK and North Sea, also US and other locations. So we think that the CCS industry will scale that fast, and it's a lot about decarbonized energy security. If you're going to have reaching climate targets and continue to have energy security, you have to, for instance, produce blue hydrogen, which Norway and Germany is collaborating on, and UK and Europe. So we think that has to happen, and it will happen based on those all those projects that we are working on as well. When it comes to large-scale offshore wind, we see that there's a lot of challenges on the grid. So you really have to think regional. Where should all that power go when you build huge amounts of offshore wind? And that's also why there is a lot of thinking around hydrogen pipelines and corridors, that you have to make not only electrons but also molecules to transport all that energy that is going to be produced, for instance, the Baltic Sea. Is it going to be a hydrogen pipeline going through the Baltics or through Sweden or in the Baltic Sea to provide all that decarbonized energy security to Europe, which was lost with the Nord Stream sabotage?
Thank you. I think the gentleman over there had a question.
Thank you. I have a question about offshore wind farms in Gulf of Riga. We have a quite hard ice condition in this area. Are there any, how to tell, financial or some other risks concerning with this not yet maybe enough investigated impact of ice to these wind farms? Thank you.
Yes, in DNV we do a lot of ice studies actually on harbors and fjords and lakes when it comes to both how that affects ships and other infrastructure. So I guess that the offshore wind industry here has to make sure that the offshore wind turbines are more resistant if there is special ice conditions.
Okay, you can leave your business card to him and you will solve the ice problem. Okay, should we say thank you? If there are other questions, this was very interesting and really a success to conceptualize these pros and cons, and very interesting. So I think you leave the slides to the Secretariat and we can have a further look on the presentation. Thank you very much. Then I think we have a next speaker, which is addressing a challenging topic of storage. Production is there, storage is the challenge. Mario V. Can I see? Yeah, here you are. You are from, you have to explain where you are from Zero Terrain.
Zero Terrain, yeah.
Terrain.
Yeah, I think through my presentation you will see about the company. But I have to admit I'm really honored to be here speaking to you, because I think we have had fabulous discussions during last 2 days, and most probably they will continue. But there's one word that was, let's say, mentioned too few times to my ears, and this word is obviously storage. And I'm going to fill this blank right now, because I'm going to claim that storage is a must, not an option. And I would like to start making my case by showing you a graph of wind generation, Estonia and its neighboring countries, Finland, Latvia and Lithuania. And considering each one of us basically wants to be a net exporter in the near future, then I see some, let's say, problematic issues there. Its first conclusion for me is that we can't actually export the problem or import the solution. We would have to have a solution in the same time moment for all the countries locally. And the next conclusion for me is, in addition to bad drawing skills, is that it's going to be a pretty bumpy road without storage. Because, for example, recently in Lithuania, what wind did was basically full flip with less than 21 hours. It went from 62 to 3 back to 80% of installed capacity. That makes roughly 8% an hour. Consider if they would have 5 gigawatts of capacity as their ambitions, that would make 400 megawatts in an hour to a country that has a peak demand of 2 gigawatts roughly. So there's something necessary to smoothen these bumps. I would also like to continue with the graph. And this graph shows how much we can actually utilize weather-dependent generation. For example, Estonia has a goal to produce 100% of its consumption worth of renewable electricity by year 2030. But what that actually means is 30% of the generated electricity misses the target. Can you imagine? It's 4 months worth of energy that is overproduced. And what is even worse, 4 months worth of energy needs to be produced from other sources on the next moments. So we should consider what would be the next step, and is growing or adding additional renewables the solution, or is there another better solution? And if we compare, if we added 15-hour worth of storage into the system, then it would make the same effect as adding extra 50% of renewables. But considering analysis houses, it would do the same result at 3 times less capex. So we would have to consider, do we want to be 70% climate neutral, or we want to be 100? And if we want to be more than 70, in that case, we shouldn't, let's say, pick the lower fruits first. We are talking about hard-to-abate sectors, I mean, decarbonizing aviation or something like that. That storage is definitely lower-hanging fruit. We have discussed about hydrogen, power-to-X, ammonia, methanol, things like that. Here, I have more questions than answers, unfortunately. But in university, they told me that expensive things must have utilization. That means that they must have hours that they work. Expensive things can't stay idle because it wouldn't do good to your business, right? So I also have heard, maybe it's not the correct number, but they need high electrolyzers and all the equipment to produce X, need high capacity factors, approximately 70%. Considering additionality criteria, I mean, the consumption, electricity consumption has to be covered first, and then the remaining part is subject to input to X, right? Then is over-generated renewables enough? Is potential of nuclear enough? Can we use cogeneration heat and power plants as an input for X? What will happen to cogeneration heat and power plants after we have a high penetration of renewables and heat pumps, etc., etc.? So I have a favorite quote: in God we trust, all others must bring data, right? So without going much explaining this graph to you, here is Finnish and Baltics existing generation and added variable renewables until the point where the capture price of renewables equals the leverage cost of energy for them. And we can see that this horizontal gray line, this basically indicates the additionality criteria. Means everything that falls below that is necessary for electricity consumption. Everything above that would be an input for X. So if we would have 2 gigawatts of electrolyzers and all the equipment to produce X, then they would have capacity factor a bit less than 50%, if you consider CHPs. If not, then less than 30%. And any extra gigawatt of X reduces the capacity factor. And this is not the reason that I'm kind of opposed to hydrogen or ammonia or things like that. It's rather than I see that also the X needs storage, because storage can increase their capacity factor. Now, continue. We have talked why we would need storage, but we haven't talked how much or what criteria must the storage meet to be optimal. I read a book recently by Oxford University Press called Monetizing Energy Storage, where they provided an overview of 30 different studies and analyses for high penetration wind-dependent European power systems. And the conclusion was that, the optimal level of storage capacity-wise would be 0.2% of country's annual consumption. What Estonia, we have 10 terawatt hours approximately of consumption, it would make 20 gigawatt hours of storage capacity. Power-wise, you would have to be able to cover at least half of your peak demand. In Estonian case, it would make, doing this rough calculations, roughly 20 to 24 hours of storage necessary. So it's not batteries that can actually affordably do it. It's long duration storage. I also read an article by Michael Barnard in a magazine called The Future is Electric. And the reason I'm putting this here is that it roughly indicates and aligns with our views also. They analyzed, let's say, potential long-duration storage technologies on a multi-criteria level, and they reached the same conclusion as we did. Pump storage ticks most of the boxes, but it requires intelligence. And by intelligence, I mean we need long-term system planning, because the lead times are long. We need 5 to 7 years to construct it, and it's suitable only on grid scale. That means that few hundred megawatts are necessary to make the business case viable. Fortunately, we have time, because most of our goals are set by the end of this decade, and our goals definitely define the need. So, If only we had suitable locations. This problem is also solved. Most of you, most probably, despite of the white and snowy weather, didn't bring your skis or snowboards because in Estonia we have not too high slopes, right? I think the highest slope is with the height difference with less than 100 meters. So, but pumped hydro needs height difference. So how to achieve it? One way would be to go underground, and that's what we're doing. 700 meters underground in northern western part of Europe. There will going to be a storage facility, 500 megawatts with modular capacity. Initial phase 6 gigawatt hours, and additional capacity comes at really low cost. We can, unfortunately, you can see, but we can achieve price per kilowatt hour less than 70 euros. That's multiple times less than batteries. And at the connection point, we can provide all the services necessary. From inertia to black start, voltage regulation, frequency response services, you name it. Everything is there. It's not just a demo project. It is actually ready to build. It's fully permitted project. It is also part of PCI list since 2013, and it's the only storage project in our region in the recent list. That means, and the project can be in this list, can't be in this list unless they would provide value for multiple countries in our region. So the project will benefit, all of us will benefit this project, from this project. And my last slide, I would like to pose a question. There's a statue of, called Thinking Man by Tauno Kangro that sits in Mustamäe, and I have always wondered that, what is he thinking about? But maybe he is thinking about what would have happened to a company that would invent a machine that could produce whole electricity in the world at zero marginal cost. Can anyone guess? My, let's say, rough estimation is that according to EU regulation and remit, it would go bankrupt, or the management would go to jail because of market manipulation. So this is actually, for me, defining factor that energy-only market is not suitable for new investments. Financiers, unfortunately, are not too attracted to this outlook, and they tend to ask revenue visibility. UK is about to launch revenue visibility for long-duration storage. What the EU is doing is giving recommendations, putting hopes on member states. What member states are doing, they are putting hopes on each other. The responsibility remains vague. So because what would happen to a country that would support this machine with their taxpayers' money? It would lose its competitive advantage because all the neighboring countries would benefit, but they would have to cover the capex, right? So we need some kind of regional cooperation to manage with these things. And yesterday was the first time that I heard that there's a European initiative that countries would have to cooperate and find at least one joint project that they will do together. So I have a perfect candidate for you. Maybe we can talk during the coffee break. Because I think that eventually what we shouldn't do is export cheap electricity. We should provide electricity here to attract the investments here. Because if we show cooperation that results in balanced energy dilemma, meaning that we have affordable energy from renewable sources all the time, then we have industries here. Then our markets can grow. Let's use this competitive advantage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I think that you are on the PCI list, I understand.
We are.
So maybe the first question, how is that progressing, this PCI project?
So they recently launched a draft list, which we are in, but the problem is they haven't confirmed the list yet because there are something still politically dependent. After PCI list is confirmed, then after 3 months, they launch a call where everybody can apply for a funding. But considering, let's say, the methodology of their modeling, I'm not too excited for storage projects in that because I can find 3 days in their models where the price is constantly stable, which is not going to happen in 2030 in case we achieve our ambitions.
Okay. So the PCI list is a project of common interest
Yes,
concept
from
the
Europe.
EU.
Yes.
And any questions to V? Yeah. Gentlemen, he needs a microphone.
Hi, Leide from Latvian Hydrogen Association. You mentioned the term long-term storage. Your solution provides storage for 12 hours, which is not long enough for us living on the 59th of latitude. We need seasonal storage. Is your solution ready for that?
Yeah, if necessary, we can also provide seasonal storage. It's not going to be definitely pumped hydro. We can use thermal storage, for example. But my observation, so to say, is that markets and the consumers are not ready for seasonal storage. They can't pay for it. Because no matter with what, let's say, technology you're about to cover the Dunkelflaute or the 2 weeks at cold time with low wind, they are going to stay idle most of the year, and somebody has to cover their capex as well. So I think we have enough existing plants or generation that the society is not ready for seasonal storage investments yet. At least definitely not energy-only market.
Okay, we can take 2 more questions. One from Skytte, Klaus Skytte from...
Yeah, I'm Klaus Skytte from Nordic Energy Research. So I just have 2 questions. You focus on viable renewable energy. Is there no dispatchable renewable energy in Estonia, like biomass or hydropower? The second one is your storage. I mean, the most cost-effective must be a kind of sector coupling between electricity and district heating. There you would have almost free storage because your thermal storage is so cheap. So this alternative, I would also have thought that it would only be feasible for long-term storage. But now you're saying that this is not designed for long-term storage. Can you elaborate how you come up with this kind of conclusions?
Yeah, let me explain. First of all, yes, Estonia has a bit of dispatchable storage. Most of it is based on biomass. The, let's say, future of biomass and considering it as a renewable energy is unclear for me. Of course, all of this biomass generation is actually from cogeneration heat and power plants. If we consider this volatility and replacing GHPs with heat pumps, for example, or using the cheap renewable electricity with the heat pumps and storing it as a thermal energy, then this generation or the volume of this generation decreases. This is one aspect of it. And the other question from your side was?
About the storage, that normally, I mean, you will use electrifying of the district heating as a storage.
So you mean thermal storage?
Yeah, thermal storage.
Yeah, thermal storage is definitely a possibility, but there is enough over generation for thermal storage as well. But you mean thermal storage for the seasonal storage? That is an option. We can continue the discussion. Yeah. No.
Okay, a last question, because I'm now lagging behind in the schedule.
Having in the mind that energy production will be localized, then logic says that storages should be localized also. Why you said that you should have storage only in Paldiski? Why not in Saku or Saue or Haanja or whatever place in Estonia?
Definitely, you could have localized storage as well, but if you want to have a most affordable, robust, and existing technology, then it has to be long duration pump storage. But you can't have pump storage in Saue, Saku, and it's not reasonable. You can build it in one big piece only. No, I mean, you can build storage, pump storage, with just 100 or 200 megawatts minimum, but you can't have it in each home. This is my point.
Okay, thank you very much, Mario Ove, for exciting intervention. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker and intervention is on a very challenging topic. It's on energy policy on the local level, planning and implementing energy actions with local authorities. So I give the floor to Skuli Gunnar Arnason from Iceland.
Thank you. And I would like to start with agreeing with so many speakers have told, the honor to be here, and very interesting topics that we've discussed and covered in the last few days. I would like to turn the attention a little bit more on the local level, on the rural areas of Europe. But before we do, I want to tell you a little bit more about the organization I represent, EIMUR. EIMUR is a public-private partnership in the northeastern part of Iceland. It is a partnership between the National Power Company of Iceland, the local power and utility companies in the northeast part of Iceland, the Association of Municipalities in northeast Iceland, and last but not least also the Ministry of Environment, Energy and Climate. And the purpose of EIMUR, it's actually to develop, as it's this, or EIMUR is a development and innovation entity for the northeastern part of Iceland. And we operate in the field of sustainability, green energy, and improved utilization of resources. And the purpose of the partnership is to support the economy and increase the value of the region, both its goods and the resources, with an emphasis on sustainability, green solutions, innovation and technology. The core objective of what we do is basically to foster collaboration and leverage the strength of the regions and knowledge by acting as a facilitator. So we bring people together, bridging gaps between individuals, companies and institutions in the area. And that brings me to the topic, which is the energy policy on the local level, planning and implementing energy actions. And this project that we have just started now, which is called RESET, which is short for Rural Europe for the Clean Energy Transition. We've seen the climate goals we talked about it yesterday. We talked about the very ambitious goal of Finland, which wants to reach their goals by 2035. Iceland is also very ambitious. We want to reach our goals by 2040. And that is both in carbon neutral, being carbon neutral by 2040, and also we want to reach a fully clean energy transition by 2040. Iceland, of course, is already utilizing a lot of clean energy, but right now Iceland imports around 1 million tons of oil, which is quite a lot, considering that all of Iceland is the same population as Tallinn, 400,000 people. And in terms of the Fit by 55 goals, it's a reduction of 1.5 million tons of CO2. But our issue is that we don't really see any tangible plans being developed in the rural areas, and Iceland is, apart from the capital area, very rural. And I will show you more examples on that a little bit later. So our problem in Iceland, we face is that on the national level, the government has developed and published climate action plans and implemented general policies. And these general policies are then expected to trickle down to the local level. And this sort of top-down approach is being done right now with very little guidance to these smaller communities and rural areas. So the local issues in these areas is that they see this top-down approach from the Icelandic government, and they feel that they have this too little guidance, too little help on what they're actually supposed to be doing. Because what they have, or the situation in these smaller communities in these rural areas, is that they have very limited human resources. And in many of these areas, and I will show you more examples later, we have many persons who are wearing many hats. And I think the best example of this is actually in Reykjavik, where the football coach for the national soccer team a couple of years ago, he was also a dentist. That was his day job. He was a dentist, but he also managed to get the Icelandic team to the World Series. But turns out this is not just the problem that Iceland is facing. We, through some connections, we found more partners in Europe that are facing a similar situation. And we collected 9 partners in 5 countries that are facing these same areas. And during this process, when we were compiling and developing this project, we were able to collect 43 stakeholders that were willing to sign a letter of intent that if this project came into reality, they would very much like to talk to us and be involved in this process in accelerating these climate action plans. And the topic of this project, Reset project, is, as you can see here on the column, it's involving regional planning on renewable energies in rural communities, the clean energy transition as the process, and we want to increase and support this local capacity and help them create these communal policies. Here's a brief overview of the partners involved in this project. We have EIMUR and the Association of Municipalities in Northeast Iceland, Vestfjarðastofa, which is a similar unit in the Westfjords of Iceland as EIMUR is. And then we have Icelandic New Energy, which is a project coordinator in this project. Then we have the Energy Kontor Syd in Sweden. We have Iskriva, which is a sort of like a startup accelerator in Slovenia, along with the municipality of Slovenia, Postojna in Slovenia. We also have the island of Menorca in Spain. And we were so lucky to get the Energy Academy in Samsø to act as a mentor. And more on them a little bit later. This is the 2 regions that we will focus on in Iceland. The Northeast region, where I'm from, and the Westfjords. The Northeast region is a collection of 11 municipalities, and there are 9 in this area and in the Westfjords. And in this area of 11 municipalities, there are 30,000 people divided along these 11 municipalities. The largest town within these 11 municipalities is 20,000 people. So the rest, the 10,000 people, that's divided with the other 10 municipalities. So the necessity and the need is very high, because for a project like this, to help them get these plans for the clean energy transition, because all these municipalities and the people working there, they are extremely busy just trying to run the community, because they have schools and kindergartens and garbage to think of. So they simply don't have the capacity to think about this. And the situation is even worse in Westfjords. There we have around 7,500 people living in this whole area with 9 municipalities. And the largest town is around 2,800 people. So the rest is split and distributed even more than in the Northeast. But what do we want to do with this project then? We want to accelerate. This is the general objective of this project. We want to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels and accelerate this clean energy transition. And we want to help them in these 5 European regions and their municipalities. And we want to do it by building capacities and assist them in building capacity in these municipalities to accelerate the climate action. We want to, and this is of course a strength of EIMUR, we want to help them establish these vertical and horizontal collaborations, assisting in these climate action plans. Then we want to facilitate the development of realistic plans. So we want to sit down with them and work on the actual plans. And last but not least, we want to disseminate best practices to let the smaller regions know, because it's the same story all around Iceland. It's not just these 2 regions that I highlighted in the previous slides. This is the same situation everywhere in Iceland. And so, what is the plan? What are we actually going to do? We want to, well, our main objective is to help them and push them to develop these plans. We see already from the discussion that everybody is ready. They really want to have this dialogue, they just don't know how. So this is where we want to come in and help them and push them to plan and to do the work necessary to develop these plans. And we want to do it by holding events and workshops together with the relevant stakeholders. And we want to show the municipality how they can use their tools that they already have to influence the behavior of the society and of the community by leveraging these tools that they already have, for example, purchasing policies and strategies, zoning plans, and then tenders, how they write the tenders when they go into a building project, stuff like this. We are not going to reinvent the wheel. We want to learn from others when we are doing this or when we are in this process. And this is why we enlisted and were so lucky to get Samsø into this project with us. Samsø is a small island in Denmark, which has around 4,000 people. And they have successfully transformed or made this energy transition where they were burning, I think, almost entirely fossil fuels, and they are now highly sustainable. And there's a lot of commonalities in these with this small island and these smaller rural regions. Small community, this wearing the multiple hats and everything. This is exactly the same as we face. So we can relate to a lot of the problems that Samsø has faced and solved. In terms of the size of the community, how they planned and how they did it in a great collaborative manner with the society on the island. We've also seen that there's this guidebook that published by the EU on how to develop sustainable energy and climate action plans. This is something that we will be referencing during the project. And what we want to end up in step 7 here, which is writing the energy plan for these municipalities. And I'm sure that along the way we will see and meet individuals and municipals that are on every level of this ladder. But I think at least everyone, it sounds from the discussion, everyone is at least on ladder 1. They want to do this. They want to be in. They want help. And then finally, of course, this project, because we are only focusing on these 2 areas in Iceland, during the project we will be communicating and telling or trying to tell the story in real time as we develop it, and trying to inspire more regions of Iceland. And we have ambitious goals to reach a broader audience, both in Iceland and in the rest of Europe, spreading the message with this relevant information for rural communities on climate and energy transition plans. And we think that because this is a collaboration between these 5 countries, we believe that we can leverage each other and help each other to sort of make it more than some of its parts. And then I think finally what we are doing right now, this project was launched in October. So it's just starting now. We have planned for February our first workshops with the municipalities. And in March, we are taking a trip to Samsø, where we are bringing along representatives from the municipals in these regions to Samsø to have a tour and show them what the great work that Samsø has been doing, and take the discussion from there and build up this knowledge and these plans, develop them together. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Very interesting. I think this presentation complemented the 2 first presentations, taking it down to the local level, and it also proved that there are very many initiatives going on the European level on facilitating cooperation on best practices, and I think you have cooperation with 4 or 5 or 6
Yes.
Other local communities in Europe, so that's good. Questions to Skuli on this? Arnason, sorry.
Hi, Stefania from SINTEF in Norway. I just saw that even though Norway is not a part of the kind of list of countries in the project, I think there's a lot of synergies also between a lot of the rural communities, for example, on the coast of Norway, and that really they have a kind of exactly the same, I think, issues, as particularly in the west fjords of Iceland, where you have have difficulty to get there in the winter time, and it's very isolated. So people are maybe mostly thinking just about surviving and keeping the communities alive.
Absolutely.
So I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing how this project goes, also coming from Iceland myself. So I'm have some kind of, I'm rooting for you guys very much.
Good to know.
But I'm looking forward to see the kind of the results from this project being communicated, because I think the learnings from this are going to be very important for many, many countries.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just rooting for you.
Yes. Thank you.
I was not aware of this program, but I think it may be some Norwegian activities here. I don't know.
I think this applies to many other areas, and it's same although we are only collaborating with the energy office in the southern part of Sweden. Sweden is also a very sparse country with many rural areas as well. So I think this can apply to extremely many areas in Europe. Absolutely.
There's a question from Madis here. Yeah.
Just a quick one. Thanks a lot. This motivation behind the municipalities, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because as you mentioned, the small municipalities, they struggle with their everyday issues, waste management, maybe some societal issues. So how do they find that this will benefit the sort of overall welfare of their municipalities? Is it only just, making things better, but do they see something else in there?
Yeah, I think there are maybe a couple of aspects, especially in the Westfjords. They are actually on, all the district heating in Westfjords is done with electricity. And they are actually on a reserve on the energy where they can cut them off, because there is a higher priority in the other part of the country. And that actually happened a lot last year, where they have diesel generators as backups there in the Westfjords, and they had to use 10 times more diesel fuel last year than they had the year before, just because the weather was extremely bad last winter. They had a lot of cutouts for the energy, and so that's one aspect. They see this as a type of energy security where they can get away from this intermittency. But also, I think it's my feeling from talking to these municipals is a sense of responsibility. There is a sense of pride in that Iceland is a clean country. We have a lot of clean energy. But when you really dig down, there are areas where we can do better. And I think these communities, they want to do better. They want to be sustainable. There's been a big project in the recent years to take the trash in Iceland and to separate it and to do better recycling. And this has been very well accepted by all the communities. So I think it's a sense of sort of like ownership or pride in terms of sustainability, where they want to both be independent and represent this cleanness that Iceland has externally, at least, but want to do it properly on all levels, I think.
A last question from Katrin Banni. Please.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I would like to stress two things. That I'm from a University of Oslo, Faculty of Law, so looking at from a legal perspective, there has been some quite a lot of work on the hierarchy of the different plans, from the national plans to regional and then city plans in terms of implementing the targets. So this is part of this trend, but it also very much depends on the legal tradition from each country. And maybe there is something common in the Nordics, and we do have, well, in Norway we have as well municipal energy and climate plans, but often it's, as you pointed out, the question of implementation. How do you put that in practice through public procurement, land planning, energy planning at the level of the city, and that is the point where we're missing good practices. So that will be interesting to see how you come up with good practices, in particular for the smaller ones.
Yes.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree, yes.
Thank you. It was more a comment than a question, maybe.
Yes.
Okay, should we say thank you to Skuli Arnason from Akureyri?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we have come to the last presentation before we have a refreshment break, and that's on the potential for regional Nordic and Baltic cooperation. We have Ole A Ødegård from Nordic Energy Research. Actually, I remember we had the signing of an MOU between the Estonian minister Simpson at once upon a time, 2018.
That's right.
On a kind of MOU between the Nordics and the Baltics on research. So I don't know if you will address that, but that's a part of the history. I give the floor to you.
Thank you, and thank you, Johan. That's actually an excellent introduction, because the program that was signed in 2018 that you're referring to is the basis for the work that we've done until now, and is also the basis for the report that I will talk about today. So that's true. So as Johan said, I'm from Nordic Energy Research, and one of the things that I get to work with is the Nordic-Baltic Energy program. And as I said, that's the structure for how we at Nordic Energy Research work with the Baltic energy ministries to fund projects, reports, policy analyses, and these sort of things. So I've been asked to come and talk about the potential for regional Nordic-Baltic cooperation. And this is something, of course, we are very interested in at Nordic Energy Research. As someone who funds projects and into clean energy and to help with the green transition, of course, we've asked ourselves the question, what clean energy technologies are most relevant for Nordic-Baltic operations? And the point of all of this is try and make the priorities of the Nordic-Baltic countries into actual actions that we can act on in terms of our funding efforts, but also in terms of our continued cooperation outside our organization. It needs to look to the priorities in the EU, different national states, and also on the Nordic level. and it should be lead into a roadmap for how we can work together in the coming years. And hopefully what we can do is to create a basis for research, development, and possibly investment that can help with the transition goals that I think we've already talked about a lot on this conference. So how we worked to get here, what we basically did was that we started by looking at what clean energy technologies are most prominent in the EU and national level. So we looked at Horizon Europe, we looked at the Commission, we looked at the need for technologies, we did a literature report. Then what we did was that we looked at the Baltic energy system. So we did a stakeholder analysis in all the Baltic countries. We looked at national energy and climate plans that, as you know, are delivered to the EU quite often. And we made a matrix. We then made a very large analysis, including interviews and surveys. And then we made a matrix based on all of these, on relevant technologies that we would work on. And what you can't see there, but on the bottom is, after that, we connected this with the Nordic priorities and what the Nordic priorities are on clean energies, and then connected them into our roadmap. And that's how we ended up with this categorized framework. And these categories, they are the ones that our report addresses directly. Some of them, of course, are more important than others, but what we wanted to do was to categorize what clean energy technologies we assume that we will be working on in the coming years. So you can see that we have an integrated power and energy systems. That means, in system level research and development. It means that it includes work on future hydrogen networks. It's also key in connecting the Nordic and the Baltics to the energy grid, which of course has a security aspect to it as well, the market aspect. We have zero emission power technologies, which is often onshore wind technologies, which is quite highly prioritized. We have solar, wave, energy, and etc. I'd also say that our roadmap actually goes to 2050 and beyond, and I think a speaker has to say that that's almost impossible, but we've tried at least to look at what we might need. And then we of course have low emission transport systems, which is could be longer term hydrogen and other biofuels for transport. It could be battery electric concepts, so on. And then in the bottom there we have industrial energy systems, which is of course a hard to abate sector. Urban and built environment, which is a very strong presence in the Nordic and Baltic states. And of course near zero emission buildings, integration of heat pumps, which is actually something we've worked a lot on at Nordic Energy Research along with the Baltic states since 2018, when our official cooperation started. We also have cross-cutting technologies, which includes digitalization, smart grids, these sort of things. So it's quite an extensive category framework that we've built in this report. So what we've then done is that we have categorized all of these technologies and how we should work on them into a initiate, a continue and strengthen, and an exploratory section. So what we've done is we've said, well, right now we need to work on this, and we need to initiate this, and we need to explore this, and in 2030 we need to continue with this, initiate this, and explore this, and so on. In that way, we can try and create a way of how our technologies will most likely develop throughout the next decades. And in that way, we can also see where is it important to do what sort of work when. So right now, for example, we see that we should work more on sustainable and integrated system, as this is vital not only to building an increasingly renewable electricity market, but also to build a foundation for a future hydrogen market. That's key right now. That's something that we are working on in several projects. We see that we need to work with wind energy. This is something we need to continue. There is already collaboration. It is something we also have projects on, going on. And we see that right now we really need to invest in funding for zero-emission buildings. So that's heat pumps, things that can reduce the demand side for energy by efficiency measures. Then we can see that we need to initiate things such as waste heat into the power system, and we already know that this is something that the Nordic and Baltics do quite well. And then, of course, we need to do more on electrification of private transport, where there are some differences in the Baltics and Nordics, but where we see a lot of ground for collaboration. And we can say that collaboration is often where it makes sense for us to collaborate. So that means that if we have common research environments, if we have research groups working on the same thing, that we bear somewhere where we would find some, in the Nordics we call it Nordic value, but Nordic-Baltic value or what have you, where we see that it would be more cost efficient, more effective, and where we can see that the working together might create some sort of critical mass that will better common goals. And then, of course, in the now perspective, we have some exploratory actions, and that includes carbon capture and storage. It includes digitalization in the energy system, but where, of course, there is some things that are going on already. We also see that we need to look to the future for deep decarbonization of energy-intensive industries. That could be within the category that I already mentioned, which includes heating and high-intensive industries. So then in our roadmap, what we really see into the 2030s is that what we did in the now perspective, such as the production of wind energy offshore and onshore, as well as integrating energy system, we assume has gotten further. Therefore, we are now working more towards developing a zero-emission power system. Therefore, we hope that we assume at least that heat pumps and this sort of cooperation has gotten to the point where we can be looking more to smart systems such as, well, here it says smart cities, but in reality what that means is not only heat pumps, but waste heat utilization, but also district heating efforts. And we can also see a huge potential then for including digitalization, which we know can lead to more effective use of energy in the greater power system. We also do a lot of work on microgrids and so on that can help reach this goal. We can also see that at this point, we would assume that the hydrogen efforts have gotten a bit further. So now we think that we need to work more on the demand aspects of hydrogen as an energy carrier and start developing CCUS technologies and infrastructure. And what this basically means is that we think there is time to start collaborating on this, so that we can get there by the next decades. And then we also believe we should be open. So we are not saying that we know all the technologies that will be there. Therefore, we have some room for advanced technologies within other renewable energy sources, and this includes some storage options where we assume that something new will come along, so it's important also to know that this roadmap, it's supposed to be a roadmap. It's not a definitive. We're not writing it as a definitive list. And then, of course, when we get to 2050, we assume that if we reached our goals, we will be somewhere near in the zero-emission power system, and we're now working on a zero-emission transport system. We're working with as hydrogen to be a major carrier in Europe and the Nordics and the Baltics, and at this point we assume that we will start using CCS for negative emissions. So there's development from the now to the 2050 based on the goals that we have set in our plans, and also on a regional level, and trying to figure out where we can collaborate best. And I advise you to read this report if you want more of a detailed introduction to the different aspects of this roadmap. And of course, there's the energy security aspect, which a lot of you have already mentioned, and this was not in the report. Well, it is in the report, but it wasn't a big room report. It was published the summer of 2022. But of course, in the last year, this has become a large part of what we do and how we prioritize. And really say that at the Nordic Energy Research, the way we view this is that we really need to we can contribute by increasing the supply of renewable energy in the power mix, whilst lowering the total demand, possibly through efficiency measures. That means really doubling down on the funding for things such as smart heating systems, for efficiency measures, smart grids, and increasing the possibilities for research and development within renewable power. And that's really what we can do now to increase energy security. And of course, this goes into what you've all also been saying yesterday and today, that we need to get affordable and sustainable energy to all, and strengthen the existing energy market so that it works best also for consumers. And I also just want to say that I wanted to mention that, to just give you a brief example of how we implement this in our research funding. So I brought with me some examples. So, for example, you see our Baltub project was a project that we had that looked at investment opportunities in the Baltic Sea, and what it basically did was try to create a framework for investors to look at where does it make sense to build energy hubs, but also wind energy in the Baltic Sea between the Nordics and Baltics. So that was a concrete way that we could that sort of reflects how we look at this roadmap. We also have worked extensively on waste heat. That's one of at least 3 projects we've funded in the last 3 years that has to do with waste heat. That has to do with making decision-making models so that relevant stakeholders for waste integration into the energy system. Sorry, and then we also have done funded a project called Next U-Grid, which analyzes the use of renewable energy in storage integration. So that's allocation of energy sources most effectively through local production of energy and also storage into the system. So that's just 3 very recent examples of some projects that we have funded that tries to answer some of these roadmap initiatives that we look at. And I also want to say that we are now actually renewing the deal we made in 2018, and then we've used this roadmap quite extensively into thinking about what is it that we want in the next years to focus on. And then we do look at exploratory things such as storage solutions and carbon capture, but we are also looking heavily to use our resources for research collaboration on the renewable hydrogen economy. That includes electrolyzers and storage technologies and other e-fuels and gases. We also look for regional energy infrastructure, mostly in digitalization and infrastructure and effectiveness. And we also, of course, will focus heavily on on and offshore wind power development also in this period, because this is vital. And I think that's already been covered by many of you. So I think I kept it quite brief because I know we're behind the schedule. So that's me. And if you want to follow any of our other projects, because we do a lot of projects all over the Nordics, but also here in the Baltics, you can follow us, our newsletter or our LinkedIn profile. So got some marketing in there at the end.
Thank you very much. I think you have defined some good roadmaps there within the framework of Nordic-Baltic cooperation. And of course, this fits very well into the concept of this conference, the NB8. So it's a practical example of cooperation. Any questions to Ødegård on this? Yeah, Stefania.
Thank you for a very nice presentation. Just a kind of a question, what do you think is the importance of utilizing waste heat from industries in a larger degree than we do today in the Nordic and the Baltic region? I'm thinking about utilizing it for extending district heating systems in places where you basically use electricity to heat up houses, and kind of freeing up that power to electrify the small transportation sector or even open up for new industry that requires power.
I think the second point you made there about freeing up space from the electric grid is really vital. I also think in terms of waste, I mean, at Nordic Energy we also work with some as a secretariat for some working groups in the Council of Ministers. Some of the things they talk about there is also, we waste heat is also something that we can trade between countries for when we don't want to use electricity, as you just said. For example, Denmark imports a lot of waste from the Baltics in order to produce district heating in Denmark. So there's, as you said, there's a huge potential there to free up resources. On the other hand, it also fits into this that we need to move towards a cyclical economy. So the fact that if we have this waste, if we can find the most effective way to use it, that's something that fits within our roadmap. That's an easy answer, but sorry.
Thank you. I think we have a question here, a gentleman.
Having in mind the fact that Nordic states are one or even two steps ahead of Baltic states in research of clean energy, it seems to me that your next step of your work should be working out the strategy for implementation and transferring of these technologies from Nordic countries into the Baltic states. And do you have such a project for a Council of Ministers, how these countries should work together to reach this common goal and to build up the common Nordic energy system?
Well, two things. First of all, we are part of the Nordic Council of Ministers. So that is what our organization does. So part of the projects that we fund, they are all collaborative projects. So the projects we fund have partners from both Nordic and Baltic countries. So creating Nordic-Baltic research communities, connections between universities, and connections between governments is actually key to the entire mission of Nordic Energy Research. So that's our goal. So, for example, in our waste heat project, that's led by Riga University, but it has participation from Danish Technical University, and I think also have had projects or previous projects from the Norwegian Technical University. So the very basis of all our projects is that they have partners from several areas in the region. On the first thing you said about knowledge transfer from the Nordic to the Baltics, it's true in many areas. The Nordics have been in front, especially. I think Denmark has led the way with district heating, for example, and wind energy, and Norway has had hydro technology and all of this. But this thinking that we used to have that the Baltics always, that the Nordics needed to only support the Baltics. Today the picture is more varied. There are some areas where the Baltics are really leading the world, and I'm talking about digitalization, and in terms of heat pump technology, for example, where we've also funded some reports on the potential of heat pumps in the Baltic states. So there are some areas now where the Baltics are actually quite upfront, and where where the Nordics actually have a lot to learn from the collaboration. So there are more reasons than just knowledge transfer one way. It's both ways now, and given the geographical proximity, the fact that we need to have grid interconnections between the Nordics and the Baltics in order to solve our common challenges. I mean, these sort of collaborative projects, I think, are key to building that common community around solving the questions. So I hope that answers your question.
I think it was a very good answer. I mean, the technology transfer, dissemination goes both ways.
Yep.
It's not one way. So I think with those words, should we, if there are no more questions, we would have a break, 10 minutes break with, I don't know, some snacks outside. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ødegård. Thank you.
Okay, I think we should start, so if people could take their places. Nei, det går bra. Jeg kan snakke fort. Okay, I think we could start. This is the last session, topical session under this conference. And it's a very interesting topic. We have invited speakers to address the session of, we called it HO, and it's very short, the title of course, but it's HO on how decarbonized gas markets and hydrogen would develop. This is certainly also a topic which links up with the challenges we discussed in the first session this morning. So we have invited experts that will shed light on this from the legal side, and we will have experts from industries and associations. We have also invited the research side, which will address energy security and flexibility contributions for consumers. So we have 5 interventions, I think. So let's start with Catherine Banet from the University of Oslo, who knows the EU legal framework for energy markets, and she could explain us how this new legislation, which was, I think, concluded very recently in the Council and the European Parliament, how this could contribute as a practical framework for first steps toward an internal hydrogen and decarbonized gas market. So I give the floor to you, Catherine, to start.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much as well for the invitation to speak today. I would say that that has been indeed two very interesting days. Indeed, what I would like to address here, and I've been asked to answer the question how can the market rules for hydrogen and electricity market reform be useful and interplay with each other in terms of decarbonization and security of supply. Because indeed, we have during the past year been discussing market reform both for gases, and I stress gases, hydrogen and methane gases, and market rules for electricity under the market reform. And we have just had on Friday and a bit earlier for the directive, but for the regulation, an agreement at the trilogue on the draft regulation that you see on the left. So we do have an agreement on the revision of the now hydrogen and decarbonized gases market regulation, and a bit earlier, end of November, there has been as well an agreement on the directive. In parallel, we all know that there is a discussion on electricity market reform that has been also discussed yesterday by Christian. And the question here is, well, is there a need for alignment between electricity market legislation and hydrogen market legislation? And if yes, how? If no, my presentation will be very short. So let's say that there is a need. And why is there a need? What are the rationale for regulatory alignment between the two? First, we have a process of energy system integration that has been mentioned by several presentations already. And this is combined with sector coupling. This is illustrated by the 2 pictures on the right. This should enable us to move towards a more holistic view of the energy system, something that is referred to already in the 10E regulation that has been revised in June last year as one energy system approach. So we find already some requirements related to energy system integration in newly revised legislation. That means as well that we have hydrogen, as already been mentioned, as a provider of flexibility in the energy system, as a factor for decarbonization and security of supply. In addition, we see that the manner we decarbonize, we make decisions around decarbonization options around industries, around regions, will need to be increasingly integrated. We have an example of that in Norway around Melkøya, the electrification of the Melkøya plant, which was presented as a package. And here we cannot just think about electrification or decarbonization on some industrial points or some sectors in isolation. We need to see the interlinkages that could exist between the different energy carriers, what is the cost-effective option, what is the more secure option as well in terms of supply. Third, when we look at the sector coupling and sector integration, there is an important element of level playing field between the actors that could cooperate but as well compete between each other. And that's directly something that could be addressed by better aligning electricity market and gases market legislation. And finally, just mention it because we could really hear a different voice from EU politicians at the moment around the wake-up of Europe in terms of geopolitical situation, but as well geostrategic approach to energy autonomy, so EU strategic autonomy, where we need to secure more domestically produced energy sources and to have a more resilient as well energy system. So this is for the background. And when we talk about alignment processes, and I'm focusing on regulatory alignment, we can distinguish basically two main processes. The first one relates to the alignment of the EU gases legislation on the clean energy package for all Europeans. So what had been already adopted in 2018 and 2019, where we see a need for alignment. The parallel alignment process relates to alignment with the electricity market reform that we are currently negotiating. It has been said that tomorrow there is a trilogue meeting. There are still some tensions, so let's see when they finish the negotiations, but that's the other point. And I will primarily refer to hydrogen, but that ultimately applies to all gaseous fuels as well, and heat as well is part of sector coupling. What are the topics for regulatory alignment on that background? I would say that there are mainly 8 elements where we can see a clear need for regulatory alignment. The first one relates to grid planning. The second one to the application of the general guiding principles that we find in policy documents or in legislation. Third, the regime for unbundling and cross-subsidization. Fourth, pricing and transparency on wholesale markets. 5, grid connection and tariffs. 6, consumer protection and consumer rights. 7, the incentives, notably through contracts for difference and power purchase agreements. And finally, the institutional setup around it. So I will go through with more or less details these different points. Starting by grid planning. Grid planning is part of market design, where we are setting up the rules for planning investments in infrastructure and energy system assets. And here we see a clear need to have a more integrated energy system. And that means as well having a more integrated approach to infrastructure network planning in order to enable this sector coupling. And that applies to different elements, levels of the supply chain, so not only transition, but as well distribution. And that's, I think, a positive element, definitely, that now the gas legislation, the gas package, distinguishes between transmission and distribution for hydrogen networks. That was not the case in the proposal from the European Commission. There are as well different levels or in terms of development plans. We have the 10-year development plans that will be at the cross-European level, and that will be linked ideally with the national development plans that the grid operators need to put forward. But we have already seen in some of the assessments, notably the latest report from ACER from July this year, that they were pointing out a lack lack of coordination between the latest revised 10-year development plan and the national development plan. So there is still a need for alignment in terms of methodology and types of criteria to be used, including for system integration. We see that coming again in the latest assessment done, including this report from May this year, the system needs a study that looked at opportunities for a more efficient European power system in 2030-2040, so very much what we are discussing now in terms of targets, where system integration is identified across energy carriers, and we see again here some new requirements integrated notably in the 10E regulation that serve as basis for the elaboration of the new 10-year network development plan, and again that the national development plans should be referring to. And that's the basis for the investments. So this is an important framework. This also relates to the role of gas and electricity system operators that can have, of course, based on these plans, a role in terms of defining the location and size of power-to-gas installations within their network, and this will be under the supervision of NRAs, national regulatory authorities. There could be further coordination between electricity and gas operators based on legal requirements on consistent CBA methodologies. So here we have concrete requirements that can support the alignment between the two legal frameworks. And finally, something that has been very much discussed as part of the new gases market package was the creation of a new European transmission system entity, this time for hydrogen. So we have INTESO-E, we have INTESO-G, and as today INTESO-G is looking at integration of hydrogen. And the proposal was to create a third entity, ENO, the European entity for hydrogen network operators, as an independent one. And that is apparently what has been agreed on Friday, to go forward with the creation of ENO. The second point relates to the application of some guiding principles that we already have mentioned. So that's very useful to come on day 2, because we can as well refer to other presentations. And notably on the basis of all the objectives that we find in policy in terms of decarbonization, security of supply and affordability, but we find some principles that could serve as guidance when we need to make the links between electricity and gases market legislation. Notably, energy efficiency first principle, that is a relatively new principle that has been enshrined in legislation, and here we start seeing in the policy documents and in the legislation some interpretation on how it will be used in concrete and how it will serve by making the decision between using more electrification, so electricity, versus more hydrogen and other energy carriers. An example of that is in the 10E regulation again, the fact that this principle, energy efficiency first principle, should be applied in the infrastructure gap identification and the selection of projects for the PCI list. So that will lay as the background as a criteria for selecting the projects. So that's a concrete implementation. Innovation principle, it has a different history, but it also promotes the technology innovation, and as much as possible in a technology neutral manner, but that's sometimes very complicated to apply a purely technology neutral approach, although it lays down as a guiding principle. Finally, solidarity principle and solidarity mechanisms are also referred to in the two legislation, and here again we need to have a consistent understanding of how do we apply these mechanisms. Some examples of that, and they have been also reinforced in the proposal for gas market legislation to have a better alignment as well with electricity. We find notably default provisions to operationalize the solidarity principle in case of crisis, notably when bilateral agreements are not in place. So we start seeing an alignment on the manner to use these mechanisms and how they can complete each other. Other central elements of alignment between the two regulatory frameworks is, of course, the regime for ownership, so around a bundling model, where we see, notably at the distribution level, that many of the distribution operators are active on both electricity and gases, including future markets for hydrogen. So here we find rules related to a bundling model, although it should not foreclose innovation and new actors. So we have some important clarification here. Notably, it relates to horizontal bundling than more vertical bundling, but there are important elements of risk of cross-subsidization and effects on tariffs for final consumers. That brings me to the fourth point on pricing and transparency of wholesale markets. Here, if we go into system integration, of course, we cannot totally isolate the indexing mechanisms between gas and electricity, something that was mentioned as an important element for protecting final consumers. So here there is a balance to reach between totally decoupling electricity and gas, but at the same time having a connection for market integration between the two and ensuring a level playing field. Grid connection and tariffs, that's part of it. We find here a series of alignment with the clean energy package already related to the competences of the national regulatory authorities in terms of setting the tariffs and methodology. So again, an alignment with electricity framework under the CEP. But as well duties to or proposals to consult neighboring national regulatory authorities when drafting tariff methodologies, submission to ACER, etc. Another issue that has been proposed and have been very much discussed as part of the gases market legislation reform was cross-border tariffs at interconnection points for hydrogen transport. And here the argument was to ensure, again, a level playing field and not to having a zero tariff, but to adjust more over time. Consumer protection and consumer rights, again, alignment, both with clean energy package and electricity market reform in order to make sure that we have a protection of consumers, access to information, but as well empowerment of consumers, both for electricity and gases. And here we can talk about the different gases as well. The two last points relate first to financial support, and this is not least, where we see more and more interaction between the incentives created through notably contracts for difference and PPAs across energy carriers. So that's something that has been mentioned yesterday, and that is also very much looked up in terms of right incentives to invest in hydrogen versus electrification, where it is the most cost efficient, and access, for example, of hydrogen to PPAs in competition with electricity. So here there are some basic as well assessment to be done through the design of the support mechanisms, applying the principles I refer to, notably technology neutrality and CO2 footprint. Another discussion that has been taking place as part of the electricity market reform was on capacity remuneration mechanisms. And that was a scheme or regime, an opportunity that was optional until now, and that has been integrated as part now of the standard legislation as part of the electricity market reform. So this is quite an important change in the market design legislation for electricity, but here the question will be how can hydrogen as a source of flexibility and storage can access as well these capacity mechanisms. So that's the detail of the criteria. And we don't have the official version of the text that was agreed on Friday, so I would have liked to give more detail, but we have to wait until it is published. Finally, the institutional rules. This is primarily an alignment with the clean energy package, competences of the NRAs, and in addition, the new governance architecture around infrastructure and planning that I mentioned at the European level with ANO. So that was, in a nutshell, what we could identify as the key needs for regulatory alignment, in my view, between electricity and gases markets legislation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Maybe two questions or something. I mean, this was very interesting, and I think you covered this very well. I mean, it's I mean, one question from me will be that, you know, hydrogen is not yet a good which is traded in the European market. Not really cross-border. It's just. Are there any challenges or problems with developing common rules before you have cross-border trade? Because it's a kind of, you know, beforehand regulation.
Yeah, that was an early question when the Commission came with its proposal, very detailed, borrowing regimes from the gas directive, gas regulation applying to hydrogen. Is that too strict? We are putting so much constraints on the market that doesn't exist. So that's so that two elements. The first one is, as was mentioned by Hans, the European Commission yesterday, thinking in terms of regulatory approaches. And something we have been arguing in our research, to have a more dynamic regulatory approach to enable markets to develop and have regulatory supervision. So this is one part of the answer. The second one is you need already to have clarification on the commodity, and we have quite a lot of legislation already under a Renewable Energy Directive, standards, the Delegated Act on RNFBOs that provide this type of common definitions. What are we going to trade? What are the values, safety, etc.? And then comes the question of the infrastructures to bring the commodity from producers to the market. I think that's the different pieces of the puzzle.
Well, it's quite impressive that the EU actually managed to get this on board, I think, before Christmas. So now we have the common rules for the internal market for hydrogen, which is merged into the gas market directive and the gas regulation. So let's see how this goes. Any questions for Catherine Banet? Yeah, Killingland.
How will the member states implement the gas market package? I understand that they have to update their gas supply laws, etc.
Yeah, they will need to revise their gas legislation sometimes, and there will be a question of how do you regulate hydrogen in all that. Most of them have regulation on biogases, biomethane as part of gas legislation, so that will be an update. Some of them are more advanced than the EU legislation, so that will be a question of finding the right balance here. But others may feel the need for having a different approach in terms of legislative structure. We have seen that Belgium tried. It has been challenged at the Supreme Court level, but tried to develop a dedicated legislation on hydrogen infrastructures. We have other examples in the Netherlands. They wanted to merge all legislation in one piece, although it's just Chapter 1, electricity, Chapter 2, etc. But so I think in terms of implementation, there is a lot of updates, but as well, some countries may also, if they have time and capacity, budget, to think a bit more into the details and think in long-term legislative approaches.
And there's probably a transposition date and compliance date. I don't know when this is in this directive, but let's see. It's a lot of whole questions, and of course implementation is challenging for the member states. Just maybe a last question before we have to move on, because we have 4 other interventions.
Which other countries in the world have similar hydrogen market regulations, and how advanced is this European or Norwegian legislation?
I will talk only the European one, because the Norwegian one is a different story. talking about the control of Johan here. But in terms of front-running legislation, it is a well-known fact that, for example, Korea has been a front leader in developing its own hydrogen legislation, and they have strong industrial interest. Japan as well, some initiatives. So I think it's very much driven as well by industry interest and decarbonization factors.
But if Americans want to come to European market, do they have access, or other countries, other regions, do they have access to?
Well,
European
if a company, for example, wants to import hydrogen, a US company and want to import hydrogen to Europe, they will need to comply with the requirements of the legislation, as any other country.
Yeah. And probably American companies, they could register in Europe and then they will be in the market. Probably. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And then we continue with the, thank you very much again. And we have now another whole question, how to develop regional markets for hydrogen stepwise, the role of businesses and the role of public sector. We have Pawel Seremak from Vatgas, Nordic Hydrogen Partnership. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for invitation and opening the stage for some even more discussion about hydrogen. Of course, you working within scope of energy, you have worked, you have seen all this acceleration of interest in hydrogen, and I'm representing one of the organizations that is very heavily involved in that. So just to explain, Vatgas in Swedish, or Vatgas, which will be proper appropriate pronunciation, is a very odd word for hydrogen. If you say hydrogen in Sweden, people will still understand, but Vatgas Sverige, that is the name, proper name of our organization. And I'm going to talk about the practical side of getting things real, because I'm representing the organization with plus 170 member organizations promoting hydrogen deployment. Among our members, there are market players, the companies, but also we have members from academia and members from public organizations. And altogether, we are joined under the agenda of driving the scope of hydrogen forward. We are also member of Nordic Hydrogen Partnership, and that is also referring to the presentation of my kind of background here. Now, it has already been mentioned, but just to recap, the enormous potential that hydrogen brings into reality of energy issues. Of course, both the versatility of opportunities for applications, and also cross-sectorial coupling opportunities, which enhances the value of establishing hydrogen even more. What needs to be mentioned here is also the European ambition that over time developed from Green Deal, where hydrogen was just mentioned as an important kind of factor for the future, going through Fit for 55, where there is more kind of specific goals directed to hydrogen establishment, and roughly setting an ambition of maybe 7 to 8 million ton production in Europe by 2030, and then Repower Europe that enhanced it even more, and now we're talking about the level of 20 million ton green hydrogen by 2030, of which half, 10 million ton, to be produced within Europe and another 10 million to be imported. So this clearly shows the journey that I was just referring to, how awareness of potential of hydrogen gradually increases. And as I mentioned, of course, all the aspects of establishment of hydrogen in one wider scope give a lot of advantages. So just to summarize, of course, reduction of emissions is a very important one. Then green jobs and the new kind of sector, the whole industry as being established in large scale, strengthening the nations, and security of supply that also was mentioned in several presentations before, and of course the system flexibility being dramatically increased by that. So now, from the perspective of implementing hydrogen, just looking maybe 10, 15 years back, it was kind of, everybody knew what hydrogen was, of course. There is a huge, there is a lot of kind of industrial, there has been already a lot of industrial applications of hydrogen produced from fossil energy sources. And so there was a lot of know-how what to do with it, but by then, like 10, 15, 20 years back, the aspects of producing green hydrogen were in infancy. So nobody was actually kind of talking about it. It was a number of enthusiasts or pioneers who kind of paved the way, showing the opportunities and promoting it. Now we have left this stage and we are in transforming an acceleration phase towards large-scale market, setting totally new requirements on organizations, on market players, on everybody who is involved, because it's not any longer proof of concept stage. Now we have to make it real and make it full scale. And this is the state that probably will remain. We will remain in this state for another few years, maybe up to 10 years or so, but gradually, of course, it will become more of a commodity, and thereby the market will be established and it will gain momentum of a full-scale market player. Now, looking into how the roles in this transition are kind of splitting between public and business investors, you may use this very simple model that has been developed to one of the researchers in UK, and basically showing once you transform from idea, business sort of proposal to society, and you eventually want to reach consumers. Initially, you need a lot of support from public, and of course, the risks are very high when it comes to investments. Also, there is low awareness about investments, about the opportunity, so it's very difficult to get them in. But over time, of course, this gradually changes, and you get some kind of market pool where it will be more natural to come with risk investments. And now hydrogen is still within technology push rather than a market pool, but of course we are kind of day by day moving the direction towards consumers. And as an example of that, how society and how public institutions support are the hydrogen strategies. So countries in Europe, many of them, some 20 countries already, they have the national strategies, putting very clear role and definition of how to go about, what role and to what extent hydrogen should be used in all of these countries. So this is obviously very good news of a clear movement towards recognition of hydrogen, and also bringing the security to investors that this is something to look forward to. This is a very good progress. Another example to look at from maybe more kind of realistic perspective, okay, if we have those strategies and we have those intentions to develop, we need projects. So here I'm showing the statistics of, which is not that, what you say, optimistic as you would wish, meaning that, of course, we are starting a lot of new projects, and year by year, number of new projects increase, which is good. But what we also see is a contradictory trend, which is that the projects started, they tend to delay their deliveries. So in the longer term, everybody kind of believes that this is important, but when it comes to, you know, here and now sort of reality, we are still struggling to make it reality. And the factors that are mentioned is regulatory uncertainty, is access to funding, is off-takers creating the kind of natural market flow, the value chain, And in some cases also delivery of components, which has been of course affected also by both the pandemic first and then the war in Ukraine, and uncertainty of certification. So those are kind of, you know, the factors that kind of lead to sleepless nights among the project managers of those projects that basically create delays. And of course, this is kind of to-do list if we want to contribute and support it further. And of course, one important key issue here is also access to energy. What I'm showing here is a Swedish perspective. We are active on the Swedish market, so of course, we are following it very closely. And especially the diagram in the center shows, you know, the perspective of challenge that the energy market is actually facing in the next few years. Because what you see is a history of Swedish electricity demand on the market from 1970 up till 2030, which the last years are, of course, the projection. And you see that, like for last 35 years or so, Sweden was more or less flat in terms of energy demand, electricity demand. And of course, now this industry is facing enormous challenges in ramping up with the pace that is expected. Until 2030, we are planning to, or there is a demand of additional 70 terawatt hours of electricity production in Sweden. So this is quite challenging. One part of it is hydrogen related, but you start seeing hydrogen kind of effect of that if you look even further. So another study, most to your right, shows by 2050 the expected amount of electricity that will be purely dedicated to hydrogen production is more or less about the same amount as overall Swedish market for electricity today. So this also gives kind of a perspective of what kind of reality we look forward to need to deliver. Now, one of the specific opportunities or tools to start building the hydrogen economy is the concept of hydrogen valleys. It's probably not unknown for most of the public, but I wanted to bring it here because it's a very good way of illustrating how to grow from small scale to larger scale and eventually create interconnections. Basically, Hydrogen Valley would be, or is, a geographically common area where you start building value chain and creating a sector coupling between different sectors involved in hydrogen. And thereby you both create learning, illustrating the opportunity, and also create true businesses that could start collaboration on this area and allow for growth. Currently in Europe, there are some 60 Hydrogen Valley projects that are under development. And of course, this is a very tangible opportunity to establish hydrogen in a full scale. Another important channel of moving the hydrogen forward is collaboration. And since we are very much in a hurry, we need to make sure that this hydrogen market will gain scale just within a few years. There is no room for sort of, you know, survival of the fittest sort of management in businesses. You really need to look at your worst competitor and see what can I learn from them rather than how to fight them. And for that matter, I'm just illustrating one of the projects that we have quite recently initiated together with all the Baltic Sea region country representatives, basically our, if you will, sister organizations from all the countries, and some of you are represented here in audience today as well. In Nordics, we are not big countries, but altogether we are actually 85 million people. And we are already representing more than 400 market players involved in hydrogen altogether. And we already have a large number of power-to-H projects under development that we want to establish over the next few years. And our plan for green hydrogen production is today under 2 million ton. As you remember, the ambition of EU reaching by 2030 10 million tons. So we could be quite a contributor on that market as well. So all these kind of, when we gather our forces together, we can create quite a momentum. And this is just one of the examples of those projects. On top of that, actually, we are also reaching out to Ukraine. So this sort of project consortium involves also players from Ukraine, as this is one of the strategic goals for Baltic Sea area, Baltic Sea region organization. And of course, we are very aware about the opportunities that will arise or already arising in Ukraine in terms of building the new energy market there. So now, just to summarize, when it comes to growth of hydrogen as the viable sort of full large-scale industry and business, there is a number of factors that needs to come in place. The first, or maybe they are not ranked in kind of, you know, what do you say, importance, but all of them are important. Sufficient production of clean energy, that will be absolutely key. All competence development in all areas. We meet often, I would say, skepticism, lack of knowledge, and also hunger for knowledge, actually. So it's not that it's absolutely necessary that we only focus on competence building among technicians. We actually need to build the competence in society to gain sort of insight level, which is the same as insights about how to use electricity at home and what to do and what not to do. So this is an important factor. Then efficient permitting process, both when it comes to electricity production, clean electricity production, that has been mentioned in many presentations already, but also when it comes to hydrogen establishment. Then early access to market needs to be supported by kind of public procurement, because the price level due to the volumes, of course, is still above what it will be by the time when it gains scale. We only can attract those what you say early adopters, which is not enough big market to really make it move. So we need public support and kind of procurement policies in public institutions to support this. They're risking new investments, and it's both in terms of capex, but also operating expenses. We see some countries, and Sweden is one of them, has been so far only focusing on capex, and we see that this tool is not efficient enough. So there needs to be a review of you know, the philosophy how to support, how to de-risk the investments. Regulations have been presented even earlier here today and mentioned in a few presentations. In some cases, we also see this new establishment, they actually open opportunity for regulatory sandboxes, meaning, you know, like experimental areas where you could start looking into opportunities of innovative policy and regulations being set that will form future full-scale legislation. And of course, this is also an opportunity that should be used. And as I mentioned, fostering collaboration and creating co-development among the regions, among the companies, among the organizations to make the journey together. So that's actually my bottom line message and the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much within the time limit. Very good presentation. We could take a few questions. I have one myself, and that's, I mean, hydrogen feeds into different sectors, used in different sectors, like industry, transport, storage, electricity. Which sector is the most promising for you?
From Swedish perspective, I can start there. It's definitely the industry. And, well, when it comes to potential in the long term, of course, potential is in all the sectors, but everybody knows by now the huge commitments that are being made in northern Sweden in terms of green steel. Just to put it on the scale, when those two, hybrid and H2 green steel, are fully established by 2035, they assume that they will need amount of energy, or the hydrogen amount that corresponds to 80 terawatt hours of energy, just two of those producers of green steel. So, and Sweden's total energy production today is 140. So I mean, this brings kind of, proportion of what kind of things are happening up north in Sweden. And also, a good news of that, of course, is that they will create, for that scale, enormous access of hydrogen at pretty reasonable cost, meaning that it will open the way for all the sectors to feed from this production. So this is something Sweden looks forward to.
Very interesting. We have a question from Stefania Gardardottir, please.
Yeah, thank you for a nice presentation. It was nice to see the kind of the Swedish view on things, and of course, kind of the regional plans differ in some sense. And you say that now we want to increase the power production or electricity production in Sweden by at least twofold, I guess, in a short amount of time. Are there any very concrete strategies in how to achieve that? And I'm not only thinking about the installed capacity of presumably wind resources, but also strengthening the grid to be able to handle this increased amount of power and to distribute it to the end users. I see that as maybe quite a challenge in the big scheme of things.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and not challenging to me to give a straightforward answer, because you need to view that from several perspectives. One perspective is the development of renewables, and currently, I just read recently, there is 550 terawatt hours worth of applications for wind production in Sweden on somebody's tables. On, in plans, in application process, 550 terawatt hours. And then 1 year ago, we have got a government shift, a new government, that, as I can see from our perspective as NGO, we are getting a lot of interest and a lot of attention from them, so they are very much aware about potential of hydrogen. At the same time, they talk about building up nuclear production of electricity in Sweden to make sure that we can really deliver the amount of energy that will be needed. So I think both those kind of trends they somehow will meet in one reality in a few years' time. And as for now, we just see a lot of focus and kind of growing awareness of this being a great challenge. But there is no kind of silver bullet solution. So we both need to build capacity of renewables, but we will also get, we also have very firm plans for getting more capacity in nuclear in Sweden.
Thank you very much. I think a last question from René Tamist.
Yes, actually, it's a follow-up question. So you primarily referred to wind energy in terms of fulfilling the needs of hydrogen sector, but based on my own experience, very often such developers or industrial consumers, they expect baseload power to be produced. So they are not very interested in variable electricity sources. So how to reconcile this request?
Yeah, one of the possible answers when it comes to finding the way. The role of hydrogen in value chain would be energy storage, and the other will be, the opportunities of supporting the frequency regulation market by the electrolyzers. So of course, these having in mind that of course both require development of full capacity of electricity production market, still they both would contribute. So that is the reality that would solve this over time, but it's still a lot of challenges ahead.
Thank you very much. I think that was the last question, and then I will give a good applause to
Thank you.
you. And then we are on the third intervention. Why? That's on the communication side. Why and how to communicate the benefits of hydrogen. So it's Aivars Starikovs from the Latvian Hydrogen Association. The floor is yours.
Yes, thanks. First of all, it's an honor to be invited here. I will not try to touch the marketing side, because marketing, that's another science. But basically, what I really appreciated today and yesterday, there was a lot of times touched. Therefore, I would just highlight from my point of view and my experience a couple of things what need to be kept in mind. Otherwise, the hydrogen as part of solution has been, I would say, it's frequently, I'm seeing this, and also as Pawel showed in presentation that Latvia don't have a hydrogen strategy. So politicians are very actively ignoring that solution. Because at the end, so first of all, okay, yes, I'm representing today Latvian Hydrogen Association, but at the same time, I'm also representing Hydrogen Europe. As Pawel mentioned, we are kind of sisters organizations. So there is Hydrogen Europe, where is today almost 600 industrial big-size members, EU, I would say world size. And we have a joint venture with the Commission. Therefore, today there is already third generation of joint undertaking. I would say spend around 6 or 7 billion euro in the specific market. But the point is today we have a portfolio of more than 1,000 demonstration R&D projects. This means R&D has been continuously done. And it's still ongoing, of course. There is always space for improvement. But the point is there is portfolio of experience since years. It's not just like Aivars is coming with rocket science and proposing, let's do this a new way. No, there is solid experience since decades, collected, approved, validated, and can be used. Therefore, just as a reminder, but I think it's important to keep, that's the, I would say, part of acquisition, what I need to always keep in mind. Because sometimes, sorry to say, but politicians are like on preschool level. They would like to ignore and give a tendency. But this is a challenge that we need to keep in mind, that hydrogen have very different roles. And this is also that, therefore, hydrogen is lagging behind, at least in our case, I know that, at least under 5 ministries. And this is challenging, therefore nobody wants to take care for that. We don't have a hydrogen ministry, at least not now. And I hope it's not the case, because at the end this is just the energy carrier. But to summarize, so first of all, it allows balance, fluctuating renewable generation. Next, it gives you opportunity to transport the energy, because I think everyone's agreed that gaseous energy transmission is the cheapest way to get energy between the regions, because electrons, to transport electrons is much more expensive. So everyone knows. Therefore, on big size, on the scale, it makes sense. Of course, energy storage, that was mentioned today. I know my friend Alexei will touch the ground, because at the end, we need to have also energy storage. But yes, I'm agree that we need also gigawatt hours. But at the end, we need also terawatt hours stored somewhere because of our energy security questions. And of course, decarbonization of the transport, industrial usage, heatings for buildings, and of course, as a feedstock. So, and this is a big challenge, why for us as a hydrogen people, we need to keep all this in mind, and then to address somebody. It's not the easy task, but just a reminder, maybe some of you have shown that slide in the past, but I love to use that hey guys, R&D we are doing for decades. Technologies are there. Yes, very tricky point is that, are they business case? Are they economically viable? I would say business as usual will arrive, but even today we can achieve on certain scale already viability if we can scale it up. As today mentioned a couple of times, we can demonstrate something by one unit here and there, but it doesn't make sense. But if we can have 50 buses at one city operating, basically I can assure you that yes, in that case, it can be even economically viable comparing to the diesel. Swiss sample, maybe some of you had heard that Swiss, they calculated, they said, we don't need the subsidies. But one remark, we need to calculate total cost of ownership. And that's something what need to be changed in today's society, this knowledge, what also Pawel mentioned, we need to review our approaches, how we are looking. But at the end, R&D has been done. We are ready for market. What we need regulators and society acceptance. Before making decision where to go, don't throw out from one of the solutions the hydrogen. As already mentioned, hydrogen is not silver bullet, but it can help you unlock a different new ways what you can provide you really the benefits for the future. Just a reminder, but that's more or less just to prove you that only the direct electrification will not solve the problem. That was at least 4 big studies done by McKinsey, Fraunhofer Institute, so to speak, and everyone said, when renewables will increase, you will have a problem with electricity transmission. You will need the hydrogen. And that's basically the point. We are not saying that hydrogen is the silver bullet, no. But please do not exclude from potential solutions the hydrogen as a way. Just to maybe about communication, at the end also what Pawel mentioned. It's good to have all this portfolio, knowledge, solutions, but exchange of knowledge is the key. And this project, what I would like to mention, this is a good sample of regional collaboration. Project was announced, officially kickoff was only 2 weeks ago, but I would say good sample of Nordic collaboration in Baltic Sea region, so that we have airports across Baltic Sea, starting Hamburg is our leading coordinator. Then we have a Poznań airport, Lithuanian airports, Riga airport, Tallinn airport. I'm proud that I used 2 of the airports coming here and going back, but both of them are looking for that. Finavia operates, if I'm correct, more than 10 airports in Finland. And Swedavia, they are operating almost all the airports in Sweden. But the point is, again, hydrogen is just what the purpose of the project is. We will assess opportunity, first of all, hydrogen as part of aviation fuel acquisition, because there will be a flight, there is Airbus working, the planes are on the process. As far as I know, next year will be already first available commercial flights on hydrogen airplanes, 18-seaters. So they are there, okay? It doesn't make some big aviation, but connecting Riga Tallinn, I think that would be excellent storyline. But the point is, again, the airports are considering hydrogen as energy supply solution, first of all for aviation, but second for ground service, because airports is almost as a closed ecosystem. They need to be independent, they need to have own energy storage, just to be able, as critical infrastructure operate, whatever happens to the grid, they will run for next 5 days, whatever is needed, evacuation or something. Also, Ukraine sample showed that critical we were too reluctant to emergency things. And now, whatever, just one rocket, your substation is down, sorry, all the trams, everything will just be silent in the city. Therefore, hydrogen is providing this additional energy supply security, redundancy of the systems, so you are able to have those solutions. But back to the basics, I hope that I'm not yet becoming annoying, but anyway, collaboration is the key. The key of the regional collaboration, to get around the table, to exchange with the experience, talk about that. Showing that what I did, I know that already all those airports across Baltic Sea, what we have agreed, we are looking further. Okay, we will work with Tallinn and Riga airport to get how to go next. Okay, we need to demonstrate. We need to have, because, okay, Hamburg, they are healthy enough. They have own budgets. They already have agreed that with Silt Airport, they will have flights. Next year, I know that there will be test flights. For us, for our region, it's always a challenge, as already mentioned. We need some subsidies, we need to support, we need to get some financial contribution. We need some demonstration cases. Therefore, we need this over regional collaboration. Then we can attract technology providers, some financial support, and demonstrate those good use cases. Just one sample, but maybe if you as a locals, you remember that here in Tallinn was demonstrated hydrogen bus I think 2 months ago, but that was again good sample of regional collaboration. Because one of the lessons what we as Eastern European countries learned that it's good that there in Europe there is a lot of big projects ongoing, but unfortunately we need to give something to touch our politicians. And there was that was an initiative which at the end it will go also to the Nordic countries, but it came as an Eastern European request to Commission, hey guys, instead of just seeing PowerPoints, we would like to also to test something. And this is another angle what is needed in today's society. First of all, to give them a chance to touch that, get the feeling, and get at the end get the results of the trial. Because at the end I remember that Tallinn Linja Transporti, after the trialing the bus, they said, you know, before that we were a bit skeptical, but now we know that yes, consumption of hydrogen per 100 kilometers sounds reasonable, that we need to reconsider our policy for the future. So this means the data of the trials are the key for stakeholders for decision making. And this is what we need. We need those demo projects, we need this exchange, we need to have ability to talk about all that. Because yes, we and Pawel, we are like dinosaurs in the hydrogen field, but the newcomers, there are so many newcomers and we don't have a time to exchange. Therefore, we need more those collaboration regional projects that we can share the knowledge from industry, from inside, because hydrogen have a more than 100 years experience. I know that even grid operators, they know how to manage hydrogen. There is existing even in Europe private hydrogen pipelines. It works. It works between Belgium and Netherlands. But nobody is talking. Therefore, yes, I agree, there is a lot of challenges how to regulate that. But guys, all that exists. We need to just accept and to think how we can get as a part of our storyline. And maybe just to finalize the samples, that's a case about Latvian Ergo. We were 2 years working with them. They as an energy company, they said, yes, you know, we know what is hydrogen because they are using hydrogen today since 40 years, but for cooling purposes. And then they said, yes, we are seeing the energy market is changing. Can you give me just a short, give me quickly roadmap? This quickly ended with 2 years work. And this is just a nice schema. But at the end, this is truly the essence that it doesn't mean that always hydrogen is a part of it. But hydrogen unlocks, first of all, you can, with your renewable generation, when you need to balance it, so in that moment when excess energy, you can have a hydrogen. And then all doors are, Pandora boxes open. What you can do with that hydrogen? You can have a multi-fuel stations. You can have a hydrogen dedicated fleets. You can have logistic as a different case. You can liquefaction of hydrogen, synthetic fuels, hydrogen pipelines, mixing already today with existing natural gas. Because gas mixtures, it's nothing new. in industrial processes, industrial application, mixing of the different gases is quite a well-known thing. So therefore, this is and of course, synthetic fuels, CO2 capture, and hydrogen through fuel cells or hydrogen turbines, whatever, but back to the power generation. And then where you are seeing all these opportunities, then of course the board is sitting, okay, it's nice, but give me, which is best? I don't know. But therefore we need those regional collaborations, exchange that just to think about, to pilot, and then during the process, the best scenario will arise. So, on this bright note, I would like to thank you. Any questions?
Yes, thank you for your enthusiasm also. Any questions for Starikovs? No,
I don't know, this is good or bad?
It's probably good. It's understood. We have to communicate, and it's one question, and then
okay, I have one bad good question. What is the price of hydrogen? Because people in Eastern Europe are very pragmatic and price sensitive. Thank you.
That's really a good question. I would say like that. I know in Germany, in the city of Köln, okay, there is chemical industry. There hydrogen can easily €5 per kilo. Today in Riga station, it's pretty expensive. It's almost €16 per kilo. I would say, does this make sense? It's too expensive. But the problem is that if there is not a user, there will be always this weird samples of the market, because if there is really the consumption, then it is on the level. It's same like with energy. If there is a demand and generation enough, then price is on that level where it should be. You can easily see that, I think that was published 1 month ago, Hydrogen Observer, and that was based on levelized cost of energy assessment. There was also assumptions for levelized cost of hydrogen. It should be definitely below those €5 even. When it will happen, I'm crossing my fingers that it will happen within 5 years. But anyway, even small pilot projects are needed just to get the touch, to push the market or kick it off. It starts to happen. Otherwise, we will never get to that. And also the Swedish sample, and I love that what Pawel said, there will be a hydrogen a lot. This means within a couple of years, we will be in the situation that there will be a hydrogen, very cost effective, but if we are not today starting to adopt our end users, we will be just, okay, there is cheap hydrogen, but we cannot use it. And this is back to what I said in the presentation, that if we will say, no, we will just electrify with the batteries whole transport, then our transport in one moment will be like hostage, because there will be cheap hydrogen, but they are dedicated only to the charging point. So therefore, we cannot make decisions today that everything goes only in one. We should have this flexibility on decisions.
Okay, I think this is very fine, and we are a little bit behind the schedule, so we say thank you to you. And then I think we have some leeway, because this is the last session, so I think we can now continue with Alexei Batrakovs from Connexus Latvia on reshaping natural gas transmission for hydrogen integration. So this is the transportation part of the challenge.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alexei Batrakovs. I'm head of Technical Development Division, and today I'm representing natural gas transmission and storage operator in Latvia. The subject of my presentation is reshaping natural gas transmission for hydrogen integration, and I will not touch market question or demand and supply, I basically will be focusing on our grid readiness for the new challenges, I would say. I would like to start with a small quote from Thomas S. Manson: "The past is behind, learn from it, the future is ahead, prepare for it, the present is here, live it." And actually it is structure of my today presentation. The past, the future, and the present. And let's start from the past. Here you can see a map of Latvian transmission system. We have approximately 1,100 kilometers of gas transmission pipelines. Basically, the pressure is up to 50 bars, and it is steel pipelines with diameters up to 720 millimeters. Here you can see also the year of construction of these pipelines. Quite, I would say, old system, but of course we continue invest quite heavily in this infrastructure, and it is in quite good shape. So 6% it is less than 30 years old, but 94% of pipelines are 57 and 30 years old. Not nice figures, but yes. And we have 24 terawatt hours seasonal storage in Latvia, and it was commissioned in 1969. So it is also old infrastructure, but in good shape. The current system and its future trajectory in the coming years. On the right-hand side, you will see these bars with grid maturity level, and as you may see, that our grid is quite good for biomethane integration, and it is understandable because biomethane is the same, I would say, methane, but with a slightly different color. Yeah, it is more green. And of course, our system is quite ready for that. We have different project for the integration of this biomethane. I think the first molecules we will see this year, or maybe the beginning of the next year. Next, hydrogen blends. All of us know that European put efforts to facilitate TSO to accept hydrogen blends in interconnection points. As I heard, last figure was around 2% in 2025. Yeah, so we need to prepare our system for this blending. Of course, it is transitional period. I don't think that it will be continuous. I don't think, I will share you my personal opinion, and I don't think that it is quite sustainable way to decarbonize system. Yeah, of course, if we speak about hydrogen, it is better to have pure hydrogen pipelines. And we have this idea, yeah, hydrogen-ready pipeline. Maturity level, you can see, very low. And we have also storage projects which maturity level is low as well, because these projects are very, very, very heavy, and actually they are quite costly, and without proper financing, it is very difficult to run these projects. So first project is hydrogen blending. Basically, we already did not pre-feasibility, feasibility study to assess our system capability for hydrogen blends. In this scope of this study, we evaluate our pipeline system, belt valve stations, gas pressure reduction stations, metering station, but unfortunately out of scope is the SOGRID because it is not our assets, and sensitive customers and our underground gas storage, and yeah, that's it. Here you can see roadmap of this project. We have 3 partners in this project. It is Elering, Estonian transmission system and electricity system operator in Estonia. Amber Grid, it is Lithuanian transmission system operator, and Gas Grid is Finnish transmission operator. Yes, and we assessed our system for 4 scenarios: 2, 5, 10, and 20%. We also evaluate CapEx and OpEx for such retrofitments. We started this project in 21 by signing of a cooperation agreement. In 2022, we finalized project plan for R&D, and it was done by with help of French company GRT Gas. And this year we finalized this desktop study, and we have result of this study. And now we need to take go no go decision. I believe it will be go towards this cap of Europe, yeah, 2 or 5%. So next year and the year after, we will do preparation work for the blending. Of course, some of equipment need to be changed, but not so many. Okay, funding from the pre-feasibility study. So grid readiness is quite good, and the steels are quite good because we in transmission system we have low carbon steels, and they are quite capable with hydrogen blends integration. Of course, if you increase this amount of hydrogen in blend, this mix of gas differs from natural gas, and of course bigger impact it will have on the pipeline component steels. If we yes, and it is related. It is relevant if we speak about small percentage of hydrogen up to 10%. If we speak about more than 10%, we need to conduct more studies and more laboratory testing. If it is less than 10%, we can speak about retrofitting without any laboratory testings. Yes, pipeline operation parameters. Of course, it has impact, yeah, because of the energy density of hydrogen, and of course, more compression power will be needed if you increase this percentage of hydrogen in mix. Yes, and once again, if we speak about more than 10%, substantial investments are needed. A lot of equipment should be replaced. And if it is 20%, you can forget about blending. It is and old system. You need to build your newly dedicated for hydrogen system. One more project, it is hydrogen seasonal storage in Latvia. Feasible or not, I put this question mark because previously this project was 100% hydrogen storage in Latvia, and the idea was based on the researches which we can do, for instance, with Inčukalns, because we are owner of this asset, we can evaluate possibility to create hydrogen storage somewhere in Latvia, or maybe even retrofit our Inčukalns storage. And the study is ongoing, and to be honest, I will receive this result in the next week. I have also initial conclusion. Of course, I will share with you this information. And the idea is of this study is to prepare R&D project plan. PCA documentation, it was previously, but we removed it from the scope because now it is not relevant, because this project, unfortunately, were found to be ineligible due to the incompatibility with the TNE regulation. It is not in the PCI draft, unfortunately, because mainly, I would say, mainly seasonal storages was not included in this list. So after we received this information, we decided to make changes a little bit in scope of this study, and we split it, this study in two phases. It is blending up to 10%, because the initial conclusion was that the same, similar like in previous study, that up to 10% you can speak about blending. After 10% you need to build new storage instead of old one. And here you can see tectonical map of Latvia. We have huge potential of places where we can store gas. I especially don't say that it is hydrogen. We are quite sure that there is possibility to store natural gas, because these red areas, these areas are similar like geology in Inčukalns. Yeah? So you can with proper investment, you can build something similar like Inčukalns in all of these areas. And I counted, it is 67 different areas with similar structure. So potential is good. For hydrogen storing, I don't know, because aquifer type storage are not the best solution for storing of hydrogen. We know that salt caverns are good, but such storages like in Latvia, it is under question, and we need more research to know whether it's possible or not. Key findings: reservoir. Further investigation and laboratory testing are needed because we provided only documentation for the consultant, but if we want to dive in, we need to make this, take this sample of geological structure, because our samples are quite old. As I mentioned, 69s, it is a long time ago. Surface equipment, yes, the impact is to be limited up to 10% hydrogen. R&D is needed. 10 up to 100%, the major part of the equipment will have to be dismantled and replaced by H2 equipment. Equipment location, and it may not be possible to install the new equipment for hydrogen at the same ATEX zone. And the last conclusion is that less costly and would take less time to build a new storage site from scratch rather than to convert the existing natural gas storage in Inčukalns. So it is main conclusion. And the last but not least project, it is a hydrogen-ready pipeline, Nordic-Baltic Hydrogen Corridor. And this name quite nicely correlates with the name of this conference, actually. It is most ambitious project, and we have many partners in this project, Gasgrid Finland, Elering, Amber Grid, and Gas System Polish operator in Poland, and Ontras is one of the Germany's operators, because they have many. And the idea is to build a pipeline from Finland to Germany, crossing Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Corridor length is roughly 3,220 kilometers. And here you can see this roadmap. In 2022, we put this project in 10YNDP 2022. We submitted a PCI application, and now we are here in pre-feasibility study phase, and we have indications that this project is included in PCI list, and it opens possibilities also for co-financing from Europe. That's good. So we are signing a contract with a consultant to do this pre-feasibility study, but to be honest, we already started this pre-feasibility study, and we work with consultant, and the result will be in the middle or third quarter of the next year for this pre-feasibility study, and we will see these technical details, what we need exactly for the hydrogen transportation, what diameters will be, whether it will be necessary to build storage for the balancing of this, or give flexibility to this pipeline, how many compressors we need, where it will be located, and perfect routing, it will be also in this pre-feasibility study. 24-25 design phase, I think we are a little bit delaying. 2026 it is final investment decision, and construction 2026-2029, and open market and operation could be in 2030. On the right-hand side, you can see again our Latvian map. I will show you only this route of this pipeline, which a theoretical route, because we don't know what we will receive after study, but now it goes from the north to the south. Pipeline length is 270 kilometers. We located this routing near existing pipeline, and it is quite reasonable because it is shortest distance, first of all. And the second thing is that many gas consumers are, biggest gas consumers are located near this pipeline. That means that they are biggest polluters, and that means that they can be our consumers of hydrogen as well. This philosophy was put in this project. Yes, and CapEx calculated based on EHB methodology, it is €500 million only for this Latvian part. Quite a costly project, but after this pre-feasibility study, I can give more precise figure for this project. Yes, and the PCI list, as I mentioned before, it is in the PCI list draft. Conclusion, the future is ahead, prepare for it, and actually not only Connexus, but other TSO prepare the system for the new gases and for hydrogen as well. We see what is ongoing around the world, and we try to move as fast as possible. It is not easy because all this project, which has been mentioned previously, they are financed from our own resources, from TSO resources, so that's not very nice. Yes, system will be ready for the EU targets. I mean this 2% or 5%, probably it will be 2%, without significant investments. What means significant? It is not thousands, it is couple of millions. Yeah? So we need to change all chromatography. We need to somehow take care of these sensitive customers. Actually, if they cannot receive these blendings, we need to put these separation nodes. And one of these sensitive customers, unfortunately, till now is Inčukalns gas storage, because we're not sure that it is possible to store in such. Yes, and the present is here, leave it. So I would say that this is not a single player game, it is a team game. All stakeholders must be included in this team game. Yeah? TSO, DSO, market, national regulatory authority. Yes, all of them should be involved, and without this strong team, I would say that success could be delayed. So thank you very much, and this is the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. The transmission is maybe one of the most important parts of the value chain. Any questions for? Yeah, one question, and then we are lagging behind, but this is the last session.
You mentioned that some clients might be sensitive on hydrogen blend, and you already mentioned that one of them is Inčukalns underground gas storage. Who are others?
It could be DSO consumers, actually. We don't have any information, for instance. It will be somehow some kind of glass factory, for instance, which need quite well-known component of gas. Yeah? So they maybe some CNG filling station. I don't know exactly, but I'm quite sure that it could be Inčukalns, and actually it could be also CHPs.
Okay. The gas storage. I mean, you have one big gas storage in Sigulda. It's huge. Is this relevant for this business?
It is near Sigulda. It is in Inčukalns. Yeah. It is this quite old facility, but it is huge. Actually, it is quite full this winter, and that's good, yeah, because we have gas. And yes, it is relevant for this project because we can have this information and use it for the further development of this hydrogen storage somewhere else.
Okay, I think we say thank you to Mr. Starikovs.
Yeah.
Starikovs, yeah. And we invite, thank you. And I invite then Stefania Gardardottir from SINTEF Norway, who's going to speak on when could hydrogen contribute to energy security and flexibility for consumers and for the energy system. Very challenging team.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I'm very well aware of that I'm standing between you and lunch, so I will try to be efficient. So as said, my name is Stefania Gardardottir, and I am a research manager and a senior scientist with SINTEF, which is a research institute based in Norway. And the title of my talk is maybe quite ambitious. So when could hydrogen contribute to energy security and flexibility for the energy system? It's actually kind of a luxury to be standing here as the last person on the stage, because a lot of the good speakers that we have seen already have touched upon these subjects, so it kind of makes my job easy in some ways. But bear with me if I speak about some other aspects as well with respect to hydrogen and its role in the future energy system. So I think I don't have to spend so much time on this. This is the prerequisite for why we are here, why we have this conference and are discussing measures to get us through the energy transition. We have quite ambitious and kind of solid emission reduction targets, both in Europe and in the different member states. So I think the 55 and the zero emission targets are pretty obvious, obviously, as I consolidated, so to speak. But I wanted to show the hydrogen value chain and how variable or how diverse it is. And just kind of flashing these different building blocks of the hydrogen value chain. I will be speaking mostly about, on the production side, the renewable pathway, basically producing hydrogen from water electrolysis with renewable electricity. But I will also be mentioning quite a bit on the building block to the bottom here, in the bottom left, which is hydrogen produced from natural gas through reforming and integrated with CO2 capture and storage to make low carbon hydrogen. And I think it's also a little bit known for all of us that, you know, the transportation distribution part of the value chain, that's also where you have a lot of the flexibility, depending on how you want to condition your hydrogen. Do you want to transport it as gas, liquid, or even convert it to other hydrogen carriers like ammonia or liquid organic hydrogen carriers and so forth. And then, you know, to the far right, we have this kind of plethora of different applications where you could use hydrogen, and we've heard about some of those today. So this is just aggregated on a high level, so to speak. But what I thought was kind of interesting and good to have in the back of our minds, just to take an inventory of what is the situation for hydrogen today in Europe. And these are just facts that I've gathered from the European Hydrogen Observatory, and showing that in last year in Europe, there's actually a production capacity of over 11 million tons annually, and the usage is about 8 million tons annually. And this is more or less used in the petrochemical industries, ammonia production, and other kind of heavy industries. A little bit for high temperature industrial heat and methanol production, but very little on, for example, transportation or mobility solutions. So this is just like the state of play as it is now. And then this is also the fact that over 99% of this hydrogen is being produced by conventional methods. So basically gas reforming and unabated, so the CO2 is basically just being released to the atmosphere. The REPowerEU plan calls for, as was mentioned earlier today, building out the capacity for renewable, not just clean, but renewable hydrogen up to 10 megatons per year capacity in only around 6 years. But this means that just kind of thinking, okay, we already have all this capacity, that means that that capacity either has to be somewhat phased out or decarbonized as it already is. So I think maybe the demand or the work is even larger than we might envision at times. But I think I want to try and answer or give an alternative answer to where could hydrogen make an impact in Europe in the energy transition, and how kind of big could that impact be. And I'm sure you have seen a lot of pictures like this before, but this is just kind of my take on it. So this picture here shows result from a study that SINTEF did together with IFPN in France and Deloitte a couple of years back, where we conducted a very detailed energy system analysis of the European energy system, and basically, you know, making different scenarios on how could things look like if we are serious in reaching our climate targets. And where could hydrogen have an impact in which sectors, and, you know, what would be the volume of that? As I said, these are just two scenarios that we looked at. There are many, many different more from different actors, but we looked at kind of two different policy, let's say, inclinations. One rooting for a kind of a diverse technology portfolio, while the other one was more pushing for renewable technologies to be entering the mix. Anyways, both these scenarios kind of agree on the same thing, and that is that these hard-to-abate sectors where electrification, switching to biofuels, other types of measures are hard to decarbonize these sectors that are, let's say, long-haul transport or heavy-duty transport and heavy industries. That's at least where we see the biggest potential for hydrogen and for volumes. And in this study, we saw that hydrogen could contribute in a bit of smaller degree to the power system residential. But again, this is on an aggregated level for Europe, and this could look different in, let's say, region, in domestic or even local regions. So this is, again, on a high level. But then I think there's a question that we have tried to address a little bit today, and maybe even yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. But this is kind of this stepwise building both supply and demand. We looked at, so where could this hydrogen come from stepwise, with the fact that new renewable capacity is being competed. There you have competition from all the different sectors that want to use electricity directly to decarbonize the power sector. We have the small vehicle transportation sector, even industries that see parts of their operations can be directly electrified. So this is a very competitive environment, and hydrogen is only one of those players trying to get those clean molecules. So what we say that as let's say, an option or room for potential is that low carbon hydrogen from natural gas with CCS can play a critical role in this early transition period in both establishing markets, establishing good enough supply for the first movers, and establishing the first infrastructure, basically financing the infrastructure, the hydrogen infrastructure that the renewable hydrogen will tap in eventually, and basically take over the market role step by step. So we see that those kind of two, let's say, production stakeholders, so to speak, should complement each other in this transition period. And we also see that up to a quarter of the hydrogen needed in these kind of scenarios could be imported from outside the EU. So this also really emphasizes the need to have a strategic vision on diversifying your energy imports, contributing to energy security in that manner, but also, when you increase the domestic renewable capacity, you're inherently also securing your energy supply. I think an important thing here is then, okay, where should we then start to create this large demand for hydrogen? Where should it really come from? And I think Pawel was a little bit kind of on that track. We have the large industries where big volumes are needed. And this is something we have also looked at quite a bit in different research projects. And we believe that industrial clusters are a key player in enabling large-scale both supply and demand. An industrial cluster could be made out of different industrial players having very different needs. To decarbonize such a cluster, you might need, for example, CO2 capture and storage for some industries. You have, for example, cement that is very hard to decarbonize without CCS, and also some petrochemical industries. You have electrification where you can, maybe utilizing a bit more biofeedstock, but that's also a scarce resource. And then, of course, use of hydrogen. So basically, this is just to emphasize that, hydrogen, like development of hydrogen infrastructure and also development of CCS infrastructure could come hand in hand in this transition period. And specifically when you're looking at large industrial clusters that have the need for both. So this could be a very important synergy effect and kind of kickstart the infrastructure development, bringing down the costs. In the meantime, where you have several players that can take on the risks together with making such investments. And also a very important part of this is such, let's say, such a development could attract new sources of demand, and particularly coastal industrial clusters that are co-located near ports. Then that could open up for the maritime sector also to tap into the production and, let's say, a stable supply, because it's not only about also, let's say, the flexibility of the system, but also about the stability and to be able to deliver a stable stream of product to the market. So this was a little bit kind of on the European perspective, but I thought I would bring up an interesting example. This is actually from the US. It was a case study that was conducted on a northeast region in the US. So this was a region that was very heavily rich in wind resources, a little bit of solar, but mostly on wind. And they looked into this kind of, let's say, famous concept of sector coupling. So basically looking at, okay, how would our system look like, or what would it gain from the future energy system linking the power sector and hydrogen production storage, of course, extremely important, together in a kind of a smart way. And what this study showed was that you could get a higher utilization of your wind resources. You are able to produce more wind when you have, for example, you have hydrogen storage to kind of buff up the system. And that also means that you can, let's see, I'm going to just show in the picture on the top here, not only produce more from wind and solar, but you can also reduce the need and reduce the production from other dispatchable sources like gas power mostly. And in that way, that can also influence the cost picture. I would say, so this is only one example, and it might have synergies with some regions in Europe, but I thought it was a nice example showing that in some cases where the conditions are right, and in this case having a windy region basically, you might get better utilization of your resources, and having hydrogen to kind of couple the different sectors, particularly electricity and fuels in this case, can bring some obvious benefits for the cost of your system, and in this case also bringing down the CO2 emissions on a total level. So I think that was a nice exemplification. So now I thought I would say a little bit about policy measures, but I don't feel like I have to say so much about it. We had very nice presentations already in the morning, and especially from Katrine, that kind of led us through a lot of the policy landscape and what's happening now. It's just to see what is kind of happening this year. There has been an enormous development and kind of acceleration of developing policies, trying to get the stakeholders from different countries together to align on both definitions and kind of how to handle things, which is extremely important. And of course, this just happened a few days ago when the EU agreed on that we will develop a supervisory hydrogen grid body that would kind of be independent on the other transmission system operators, stage-wise. So this is all good and positive, but then I think the kind of flip side of the coin is that the road from initiatives, from project ideas to actual investment decision is still very long. It's very, very bumpy. And we are really not seeing so many of the projects coming online. So there's still a lot of kind of hurdles to get through. There's a lot of things to figure out specifically what part of the value chains should be supported. How do we make sure that the end user can actually get the product with a foreseeable price on it? This is something that our collaborators in some of our projects are really struggling with. Yes, we might get support for building the production facility, but it's very hard to get contracts with the end users because it's still too risky, it's still too expensive for them to commit. And usually those are not companies with very strong financial muscle, so this is I think this is a kind of a key weak point that I think all of us in the room need to continue to work on. So I think with that, I just wanted to take a few kind of takeaway points from this and maybe sum up a bit on the hydrogen section. So the first point I think is very obvious, that if we are going to reduce our emissions in not even, in line with the emission targets, but just, in general manner, we need a massive expansion of renewable capacity, and that's going to kind of come in all terms. But then hydrogen can play a meaningful role in the sectors where it's hard to use other measures to reduce emissions. Where electrification is not really an option. It's not really an option to use CCS or biofuels or so forth. And It can contribute to increased energy security and also flexibility of the energy system if done right in a smart manner, and also, of course, if the technologies, for example, for large-scale hydrogen storage are developed properly. Yeah, so this is basically what I said, and again, for hydrogen to make a significant impact, not just small pilot projects here and there that will never become big value chains. We need to continue to develop the markets, and we need also support schemes that supply or stimulate demand creation. And I think that's one of the absolute key points. We've seen that regulatory barriers are being addressed as we speak, but there's still a lot of work to be done here. Also, when it comes to certification solutions and kind of, I think this is really important for you have cross-border transport of hydrogen. You know, we have to align on you know, what should be the standards, what should be the product quality on both ends. These kind of things, and then we definitely need to support technology development, and it made my heart very happy when someone said here we need more R&D, which I will always also root for. But I do agree that, of course, many of the technologies are already there, but they have not been utilized or used necessarily in these new applications that we are wanting to bring hydrogen into. So there's still quite a lot of questions that we need to do on the technology side. And of course, if low carbon hydrogen from natural gas with CCS is going to be a part of the solution in helping to create these first infrastructures and bringing down the costs, then in any ways we need to also continue to develop and deploy large infrastructure for CCS. And this is not only for hydrogen, but also for all the other applications where other solutions to decarbonize are not really available. So I think I managed to keep my talk quite efficient. So I thank you all for the attention, and wish you a nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, even on overtime, maybe one or two questions for Stefania. So
we are hungry.
We are hungry, you know. And thank you very much again. And
thank you.
See you again. And I'm even more blocking for the lunch, so I'll be very short in the concluding remarks. Which are necessary. Thank you to all the speakers and the audience. We have had exciting 1.5 days. We had very good selection of policy relevant issues, I think. Major items in European Green Deal and Fit for 55 in a Nordic-Baltic 8 context has been addressed. Those who stayed in for the whole conference have learned a lot about the global and European energy outlooks and priorities. We had good presentations from the IEA, DG Energy, EBRD, and IRENA. We had a good session on electricity market design yesterday with key actors in the panel. We continued yesterday with very good overview from DG Energy on the renewable and energy efficiency directives. We had a very good overview from IEA on the regional situation on energy efficiency and renewables. And we had very good case country presentations from Estonia, Denmark, and what was the last? Finland. And today we had a very interesting discussion on technology, innovation, local action, and Nordic-Baltic cooperation prospects. In addition, we had just now a good session on hydrogen and the prospects for hydrogen and decarbonized gas market, the overall framework, and also concrete examples. So the major objective has been to have very good networking, I mean, to make new connections. I hope that you have developed new connections during these 2 days. So thanks for all the contributions and also support from the Nordic Council Ministers Office here in Tallinn, and also thank you on behalf of the Nordic Energy Corporation and the Nordic Energy Committee, which I represent. So I can only wish you a good trip back and a good day still. So thank you very much. That was the quick conclusions.